It's 2026. I have no idea how we're already here. If you remember back in early 2025, I made a video talking about all the games I played through during 2024. Well, why not continue that trend and talk about the games I played during 2025? If you haven't seen the 2024 games video, I recommend watching that after this video, as some things from that video will continue over to this one. But if you don't remember, I completed 130 games in that video, plus a couple others. That was a lot. But in 2025, I completed about a total of 90 games, plus a couple other smaller things. Yeah, it's not as much, which is probably a good thing, though then you might be wondering, how the hell is this video longer? Well, instead of writing the script at the very end of 2025 and having to recall my thoughts of the games at the very end, I instead wrote the script progressively throughout the years so that memory was fresh for each game. This video is going to be structured pretty much the same as last time. Each game is going to be listed from my backlog, will have their own segments. There are some games that don't have their own segments, but will still be talked about, which is mainly just games that were pretty much just repeat replays or DLC or just something that's not very much worth mentioning. But anyways, let's get to the first game. Shortly after I released my 2024 games video in January, I started my first game in 2025. While it wasn't the actual first game I played of the year, it was the first one I fully played through and finished. Ratchet & Clank is an interesting game, to say the least. The platforming can be fun, and the combat can be interesting. The game is absolutely hilarious though, which can also be said with a lot of the other games in this series. For a first start, I think it's good and sets what it wants to do while giving a good foundation for the series, but I have a handful of problems and frustrations with it. This game is a pain at times. With most of the game only allowing 4 hit points, it can be hell to get through. You can get more health later on in the game, but it takes a good bit of grinding for it. This is something the later games fix though, so that's good at least. The later areas just kinda suck with a bunch of enemies going after you, and the checkpoints can be unforgiving. Some enemies in the final area can even hit you when they're out of draw distance, which, why? But I don't want to be completely harsh on the game. It's still good and I did enjoy it for the most part. Just, I did have a good bit of frustration with the game, which luckily the series fixes as it goes on. Another new series for me, I guess. While I have played Cut the Rope many times along with the sequels when I was younger, I never actually played them in full. Randomly, I decided to just download the series on mobile and go for all their achievements. I feel like everybody knows what Cut the Rope is. If you don't, you just feed the green alien thing named Om Nom Candy by typically cutting ropes. I actually did start this game before Ratchet & Clank, but played it periodically through January while still working on the 2024 games video. I just didn't finish it just shortly after Ratchet & Clank. It's a good puzzle game, the gimmicks are fun, and it's pretty charming. The game is littered with ads though if you're only playing the free version, which sucks. It makes it a big pace breaker since you're getting added like every 2 attempts. Luckily you can remove the ads for $1, which I hate paying money on mobile games, but for the convenience and not having to add every couple tries, I was fine with it, doing it improved my experience. They'll keep that in mind for the third game in this series later in the video. Overall though, it's a good puzzle game, maybe worth playing for a nostalgia trip. The sequel to the PS2 classic, Going Commando is it's an interesting game. It feels like a better improvement to the original game, adding a lot of quality of life changes. The worlds are just as interesting as the original, maybe even better. The characterization is a lot better, making the 2 heroes a lot more likable. Weapons are awesome, and it feels more sane than the original game, though I still have frustrations and problems with it. The checkpoints are inconveniently placed, so progressions can just be a slog. The difficulty is still high, which they did implement adaptive difficulty to try to make it easier if you keep dying, but it's still a pain even when it tries to adapt. Having to redo some puzzles or take out hordes of enemies again just because you die from a mistake is just not great. It really doesn't feel like the kind of jump Sly 2 was from Sly 1 that I was hoping for with Ratchet & Clank series. Not to say it's bad though. Health upgrading is a lot better where you can just get a lot more health just by gaining experience, which is better than grinding bulls to pay for it. The trade-off though is you take more damage with enemies, which is fair I guess. I feel like the series might just not be complete in my style, at least the earlier games are. Though I still like it, and I can see why artists consider Going Commando as one of their favorite games ever. The somewhat sequel to the original Cut the Rope, despite not actually being the second game. The game is basically just the original game, but more. There's new concepts like rockets, suction cups, bamboo shoots, and more. Considering the title, this feels more just like it was made just to experiment with new ideas, which some do get added into the next game of the series, though I feel like it just wasn't as much polish in the levels as there was in the original. It feels like the puzzles just break randomly, or you have to hope that your tempo is working with RNG. I did get the gold version from the get-go, so I didn't have to deal with the ads, and one mechanic to not have to wait like the free version makes you do. It's not bad, but there's not as much reason to play unlike the original game. The third game in the PS2 trilogy, Up Your Arsenal, is a pretty good game. Personally, I think it's the best in the trilogy, and just works a lot better. Some frustrations are still there, like the difficulty being high and the checkpoints a little irritating at times, though not as bad as the R2 games. The combat exploration is still great though, and the game has some of the best jokes, and you just feel like more of a badass than the R2 games do. The game has more mission-based objectives though, which tend to suck honestly, but the game is still pretty good. Arguably the best in the series, which is a little concerning since there's still like 15 games left in the series. The fourth game in the Ratchet & Clank series, but very different from the R3. It's not an exported platform like the original trilogy, which kind of keeps it from being a tetralogy. It's a lot more combat focused, and you only play as Ratchet now with no Clanks, which is a bit different of a shift. It feels similar to the combat of the other games, so it's still fun to play. And to be honest, this might be one of my favorite games in the original series. The game barely has any pace breakers, so you can just go from challenge to challenge, which mostly don't last long or outstay their welcome. I also really enjoyed the gameplay a lot more as you can just keep blowing stuff up and mowing down enemies. The game was also the first in the series to have a selectable difficulty, so I was able to play through with enough challenge without making myself frustrated as much. The game just has a lot more edge for some reason. Considering it released in the mid 2000s, same year as Shadow the Hedgehog, they definitely only did it just to stand out, appeal to more people. I still think Going Commando and Up Your Arsenal are the better games, but I personally just enjoyed Deadlock the most out of the PS2 series. When I set out to play every Ratchet & Clank game, I met every game. Going mobile is a weird game. For a Java game, it's actually not that bad. As a Ratchet & Clank game though, yes, it's probably one of the worst ones. But in some bubble, they actually did do a decent job in making a game for the series on Java phones. It's a 2D platform with levels that tie into each other rather than multiple planets, though the levels look very similar to each other and don't really stand out to one another. There was a handful of guns collected from the other games, even the Rhino from those games after collecting the titanium bolts. You also get codes for unlockable skins or Ratchet Deadlock for beating the game, which was a really cool way to tie the two games together somewhat. One thing I forgot to mention with the PS2 games is that if you have saved data of the previous game, rather than Deadlocked, you can actually get perks like weapons from the prior games for free, or discount items in Up Your Arsenal. It's something I really like about the series, as it rewards you for playing each game, including the Java game. Honestly, PlayStation Java games aren't that bad with this, and also the God of War Betrayal. Overall, not bad, just probably one of the weaker in the series. The somewhat threequel to the series, by technically not being the third game, Cut the Rope Time Travel is a really solid game, and feels like a better follow-up to the original game. This time, instead of just being Omnom, you have to be a normal of his ancestors with another piece of candy. Having two pieces of candy at once does make some unique puzzles and can be fun, though it can be a bit to manage both at times. You have to keep jumping back and forth between the two. Each time period having a new gimmick is cool and ties to Omnom relatives pretty well. There's only 15 levels per period now instead of the usual 25, which is weird, but it makes progression a lot better and just doesn't make gimmicks outstay their welcome. So unlike the first two games, Time Travel doesn't have a gold version, which means the only way you can remove ads if you get the subscription service, which costs $10 a month. I understand a one-time purchase for a cheap price, but a monthly service just kinda dumb for a game like this. So I played through ads and was interrupted every 2 attempts with the usual unskippable ad. It was a big pace breaker, and this would fall with the following games also, unfortunately. But besides that, Cut the Rope Time Travel is actually a really good game in the series and probably the best in the original trilogy. A bit of an odd game in the series. It's just a short 25 level run that's Christmas themed. Good thing that I played it 2 months after the holiday. Holiday Gift is basically just a remix of levels in the original game, just now with the Christmas style in the background, music, even magic has replaced with stockings. It was really short, only took about 15 minutes, 100%. It's not available on the Play Store, so I had to play it on a laptop where it's available on the Chrome Store apparently. There's not much already to say on it, it's just a decent side game in the series. Next in the Zelda series is Oracle of Ages on the Game Boy Color. This is just a weird game for me. It's a really solid game, even on its own without Oracle of Seasons. It's almost like a Pearl Ocarina of Time with the past and future aspect. While I haven't linked the games yet with Oracle of Seasons at the time I'm writing this, it still feels like a full game. Just, I didn't really feel anything much out playing it. While I enjoyed the entire time, I just didn't have the same feeling that I had while playing Link's Awakening or the N64 Duo, or even the original NES one. Maybe it's just because I played this after playing 3 higher ones before this, making it feel less special, but regardless, it's still a pretty solid game, and I'm interested in how it links to Oracle of Seasons. Next up in the Ratchet & Clank series is the first PSP game. Size Matters is not good. It starts off fine, it feels like a traditional game in the series. There's some things like base controls and the occasional vehicle or hoverboard races that require getting used to, but as you go on, the game just gets worse. Enemies just don't really flinch, and they're just ammo sponges, making the games more frustrating as you get through the second half of the game. The winner fight near the end of the game is also just dreadful, which is a necessary couple minute long running segment that just can't be skipped if you die during the actual fight. The final boss is also just easier than people say it is. Just run the attacks and keep spamming with shock rockets and refill your ammo when needed. It'll be pretty easy. There's more to do in this game than going mobile, but this game just has some of the biggest and lows so far in the series, making it arguably the worst one. The Greatest Achievement returns. I talked about this game in my 2024 games video, but it also made its way here too, I guess. Nintendo finally added to Switch Online, and of course I was going to play it. Not much of my opinions have really changed since the last playthrough. The reason why I'm not considering a replay instead of its own entries is maybe because of the way I played it. When I played it in 2024, I played it on an actual cartridge, while this time I played it on the Switch, which is usually just enough for me to make their own entries rather than just kind of as a replay. But yeah, this game is still great. I played it on hard mode this time, so there was some differences, but mostly a similar experience. If you want more of my opinions on the game, I recommend watching my 2024 games video. I think that's still worth checking out. After playing Size Matters, I really wasn't excited to play Theory Agent Clank soon afterwards. I've also seen people consider this the worst game in the series, which also just didn't help. But honestly, I didn't completely hate myself when playing it. It's far from perfect, or arguably even good, but I enjoyed it a bit more than I did with Size Matters. There weren't that many frustrations in the game for the most part. The rhythm segments suck since the inputs tend to be delayed. The final boss is just irritating since it uses a lot of quick time events. The segments also just drag on for way longer than it needs to be. But I didn't necessarily hate it most of the time. I wish they were a whole lot shorter and just didn't all say they're welcome, which all of them pretty much do. Though I like the idea of a game where you don't play as Ratchet the whole time. You still play as them in arena style segments, but you're mostly just playing Clank. He's faster than usual, which is good because he's really damn slow in the other games. But it's just mostly a typical RNC game, it's just a different character. You play with Quark a couple of times, those parts kinda suck. Overall, not a good game, but it's not my least favorite in the series. Continuing the Oracle duology, Oracle Seasons the second half to do. Originally thought this was just going to be the same game again, but the dungeons were different. But to my surprise, this is just a whole other world on the same scale as Oracle of Ages and Link's Awakening. The main difference is the game is more combat focused compared to Ages, which made the game go by a whole lot faster. There's also now season changing rather than time travel, which works kind of similar to Ages, where it does the same areas, both different layouts due to the changing. I did also link the games, so I got the secrets between the two games, which also made me go back to Oracle Ages for some secrets. I did enjoy it a bit more than Ages, but that's nearly done just me enjoying the combat over puzzles. Overall, it's worth playing the two of the games to get a unique experience. The Weird Ass Games makes its grand return from 2024. You probably remember the DDR Mario Mix video I released earlier this year. If not, you should check it out after this. It's a decent video. But yeah, my opinions are about the same as last time. It's just a weird and bizarre game that honestly is really fun and enjoyable. The reason it's included as an entry is just because the last time I played through on emulation, while this time I played on an actual disc. I also have the official dance pad, which felt more responsive for the most part. Maybe it's just me missing my stats, but I feel like sometimes it just won't read my inputs, which sucked. But the dance pad could also just be old, which is fair. Overall though, still a fun game, might be worth checking out. Back to the Mario Sports games. The Game Boy Advance duel are up next. I started Power Tour to keep consistency of alternating between the two series. I have actually played this game back in 2021, I think. Forgot a good majority of it. After replaying it, it's another solid Mario Sports game. I don't think it's good as Power Tennis on GameCube, but I still think it's up there with some of the best ones. I like how it's kind of sequel to the Game Boy Color game, even having the main character from that one appear there. The tennis itself is fun, although still kind of awkward due to being primary 2D console. The layer matches get kind of irritating though, with the opponent shoots feeling like complete bullshit. I feel there's just something about the sports RPGs where the tennis games just aren't as enjoyable compared to the casual console tennis games. They're good, and I like tennis overall more than golf, but the tennis RPGs get a bit more irritating than golf RPGs, and I'm enjoying those ones more. I'm not trying to hate on the games though, I can see why people enjoy them, just not as much as my personal favorites. Overall though, Power Tour is another good Mario sports game worth playing. Following up the GBA Tennis is GBA Golf. Mario Golf Advance is another solid game in the sub-series. Just like how my opinions of GBC Mario Tennis and Power Tour are similar to each other, my opinions of Advance are similar to the GBC Mario Golf. I typically don't like golf all that much, but I personally prefer the handheld Mario Golf games over the handheld Mario Tennis games. Having a slower, self-paced game honestly works better than RPG style story than tennis does. But yeah, Advance has the same style as the GBC game, and just expands on it. Everything's more detailed, making it look really nice for the system. The gameplay is more polished and just feels more precise. I'm not fully sure if it's a sequel to the GBC game like how tennis games were, but it does feel like a proper continuation. Overall, it's another high quality sports game that's just worth checking out, even if you don't like sports all that much. Now on the PS3, the next third of the RC series makes their way in. Starting off was Ratchet & Clank Future Tools of Destruction, the first of the Future trilogy. With the game being the most powerful system at that time, it had a bit to live up to. And I think it did a decent job, I guess. It's not bad, far from it. After playing the PSP duo, this was a great leap in the right direction. But I feel like the game had issues that just needed some polish. I found some platforming weird, maybe when it came to the bang the boots where it would just freak out and watch me somewhere. One time out of bounds, I had to reload a save. The weapons also just get outclassed pretty often, as it felt like a lot of the layer enemies were just bullet sponges and I was running out of my ammo quickly. The final boss is also just a pain in the ass. I would have loaded almost all my entire arsenal on him and you still have a bit to go with basically no ammo refills, but the game is still pretty fun despite that. It looks amazing for starters, although the past 3 games were handheld games with lower quality visuals, one which was a sprite game, so it wasn't as recent in comparison to the PS2 trilogy. The gameplay is mostly the same as the PS2 games, which is a good thing, not the weird controls the PSP games had. The story is interesting, though it feels kind of underbaked due to spreading across 3 different games. You also have 3 quick select pages now, which is a nice quality of life change. Overall, it's a decent first start on the new at the time console, but it's still not as amazing as the first PS2 games. Next game in the Future trilogy is Quest for Booty. The game really didn't need to exist at all, honestly. It actually wasn't even supposed to, but a good way through the next game's development, they decided to release a short game just to fill the gap between the 2 main games for the Future series. No, I should say I don't hate this game just because how unnecessary it is. It basically feels like DLC for Tools of Destruction, even being made from most of that game's assets. The game is super short, taking me just a little over 3 hours. The gameplay is kinda similar to Tools of Destruction, though a bit weird also. After the first bit of the game, you lose your small handful of weapons and just don't get them back for the first third of the game. So it's maybe just platforming and puzzles you have to do without much combat until about the second area where you get a couple weapons back. There's only like 3 areas in the game, so there's not much to really do. The story doesn't really have much. The robot players from Tools of Destruction return, along some new ghost players for some reason. The story's just kind of there. The only thing that's really new about the game is the wrench tether mechanic, which is brought back for the following game. Like, he's also just not in the game, really. You only see him in the ending cutscene. Overall, just kind of an unnecessary game, but it's not really going to waste your time if you decide to play through it. Final game in the Future trilogy is A Crack in Time. Continuing on from the previous 2 games, Ratchet is still on the hunt for Clank like in Quest for Booty, but now is actually in higher stakes. Interestingly, you start the game off as Clank, which isn't the first game to do this, but unlike the other game, it's actually a lot more fun. Clank controls the best that he's ever had with his puzzles and platform being really fun. Ratchet still controls about the same as he does from Quest for Booty, just some new unique weapons. The duo doesn't actually team back up until late in the game, where it feels like Tools of Destruction's controls again. Like I said before, the stakes are a lot higher now, with the threat of time being reverted or changed so the duo never meet. Dr. Nefarious returns as the main villain, sends up your arsenal, and he poses even higher threat in my opinion. He straight just wants the duo dead and wants to kill him over and over again by warping time, which is more than just turning Ratchet and everyone else into robots like in the previous appearance. The story is a lot stronger than most of the other games. With Ratchet wanting to save the Wombats and Clank finding out about his father, there's a lot of connection to family in the story. The game is a bit more forgiving also, even on normal difficulty, which didn't make the game really frustrating to play through. Overall, with its polished gameplay and fleshed out story, Ocarina of Time is probably my favorite in the series. Back to the Mario Party games, 8 is up next in the series. I've always had a soft spot for this entry, mostly because it's one of the first two I grew up with. Even playing it now with a somewhat more critical eye, it's still pretty fun. The gameplay is pretty similar to the GameCube Mario Party games, just now with the motion controls put in. I don't necessarily hate the motion controls, but they didn't add much to the game other than the minigames. Speaking of which, the minigames are pretty good. Some are just playing a bit weird due to the force motion controls. The boards are cool, although not my favorite in the series. Single player is nothing special. Some are single player, you can play on smaller versions of each board doing certain objectives. Some of them suck though, like King Boo and Bowser boards, and it didn't help that I had to play through them twice on Blooper and Hammer Bro. But yeah, it's pretty solid and a good continuation of the GameCube games. Shortly after playing Mario Party 8, I decided to replay a Sonic Forces for some reason. I'm not really a fan of the game, but I was kind of just wanting to replay to see if I remember the way I did. And it's still just a bland and kind of boring booster Sonic game. I played through it in summer 2022 and had it logged so it didn't include its own entry, as I had played on the same console like Wario Land 4, where that replays a different console than last time. The gameplay itself wasn't really bad. It's mostly polished and works for the most part. The music is pretty good, although Frontiers is kind of replaced with the vocal tracks and cyberspace levels. But this is kind of where the quote-unquote praise ends. The story is just dumb. Like, why does Infinite go after Sonic the whole time when Shadows was the one that kicked his ass in episode Shadow? Nothing in the story really feels fleshed out and just feels empty. The custom character is cool, but doesn't really add anything to the game. It's not a long game luckily, but it's just a nothing game. I probably won't replay this game anytime in the near or even far future, to be honest. Though at least we got Hoobastank to sing the main theme. Next stop in the Ratchet & Clank series is All For One. I didn't know what to think going into this game. I've heard everyone saying it was the worst in the series and just a long, boring experience. But considering I'm playing through every game in the series, I was going to play regardless. And after I was done, I don't really get the hate for the game. Is it amazing like most of the series? No. Is it as clever and interesting as those other games? Also no. It's supposed to be just a co-op party game different from the other games, and that's what it's always supposed to be. So comparing to the others that are the same weight really isn't all that fair. The gameplay is a bit different, being more linear hack and slash similar to, honestly, Skylanders, which is good or bad depending on who you ask. The mechanics are similar to other games, having a wide variety of weapons and tools similar to what those games had. The game does tend to change things up often with new gimmicks and obstacles, though unlike Secret Agent Clank, where that had a bunch of gimmicks, All For One doesn't drag them out as long, but it's more frequent due to the longer length of the game. I did play it only solo, which is fine enough, but it definitely would be better with more players. The game really wasn't all that irritating and exhausting either, except maybe at the late game where it's just wanting to finish up. Overall, I don't think All For One's that bad. Now, I'm not saying that Sims are games like Up Your Arsenal or Crack in Time, but as a co-op adventure game, it's decently fun. You might be getting tired of me talking about this franchise, and I don't really blame you, but I'm near the end of it, so just hold off a bit longer. Full Frontal Assault is another spin-off of this series and is another unique kind of game. The controls are closer to a typical game in this series, but it's now more tower defense based. It's fun and works pretty well, though I personally just not that much of a fan of the genre. But the game isn't really long, so it doesn't outstay its welcome. I actually got the game from a game store the same day I beat it, and it only took me a couple short scenes. The villain's also funny, but that's mainly just because he's voiced by Richard Horvitz, so all I hear is him and Billy when he talks. Overall, it's a decent game, just not something I'm particularly much of a fan of. I'm making sure every game gets played in the series, and the second mobile game of course could be included. Honestly, the story behind me playing the game is more interesting than the game itself. So if the game only plays on 32-bit devices, and most modern phones are 64-bit, I couldn't download with what I had. I remembered I had a Samsung On 5 that I gave to my friend for scrap and destroyed for fun. Luckily he still had it, but when I got it back, the phone just wouldn't fully turn on or factory reset. Luckily meaning the phone was just corrupted or something. At that point, I just found the same model phone on eBay for cheap and got it delivered. When I got it, the Play Store just wouldn't open for me to download it because the game is surprisingly still available on mobile stores. I gave up with that and just downloaded APK, which finally worked and was playable. And was it worth it in the end? Not really. The game is just endless runners similar to Subway Surfers and Minion Rush, but you have a gun now. There's not much important going on the story side of the game. It's just showing what happened prior to the events of the next game on the list. The game is full of bugs, which could just be the version I downloaded, but I still feel like that wouldn't change much. If you enjoy Endless Runners, then you might like it better, but this might be the worst in the series, even worse than Size Matters. It just sucks this is the only game in the franchise I unlocked the Rhino in. Finish off the PS3 era games, Into the Nexus is the final game for the system. To be honest, I don't really know much what to really say about this game that I haven't said about the previous games. The structure goes more closer to the original PS2 era games with sportive branching paths, while the gameplay goes more traditional style since Crack in Time. The story was good too. I think it was just starting to fizz and burn out though, but luckily it's near the end of the series, so it's not really much of a problem. The game is also pretty short. I ended up being in a couple sittings, but it feels like a good wrap up for the PS3 era before moving on to the movie and Rift Apart era. I would say that this is my second favorite for the console, although not necessarily top 3 for the series. Overall, this, along with all the other Ratchet & Clank games on the console, are all worth playing. Yeah, this game was going to show up eventually. Ultra Smash is just boring. You've probably seen the Scott the Wild episode on it, and if you haven't, do yourself a favor and watch that later. But what he said in the video does hold true for the most part. Yeah, he over-exaggerated a bit, but this game is just really nothing. The gameplay itself is good and pretty polished, but that got more improved on with Aces on the Switch. The game also looks pretty good, but that's all I really have to say that's good on it. The knockout mode is the closest we have to a tournament or a story mode, which is just being a bunch of characters back to back to get a win streak. The rest are just normal tennis modes, with some having differences like power shots and mega mushrooms, which really don't change the gameplay all that much. I didn't even bother with the amiibo stuff honestly, I just want to be done. This game has less content than the N64 game, which they at least had a reason to be lacking since the first game Camelot made for the sub-series. This just feels kind of insulting that we got this bare bones of the game after some amazing titles like Power Tennis and the Game Boy Duo. This isn't a game really worth playing, just play any other Mario Tennis games and you have a better time. Next with the Mario Golf games is NES Open Tournament Golf. This one's a bit weird as it's not explicitly a Mario Golf game, but you play as Mario and there's a handful of Mario elements in the game, so it's close enough. Being one of the earliest in the sub-series, other than the couple disc system games, it really did lay the groundwork for the sub-series for Camelot to pick up. It's basically what you expect for a Mario Golf game to be on the NES. There's not a whole lot of content, only 54 holes total divided by 3 tours. There's a few modes like singles, matches, and tournament modes. All of them just boil down to playing through the same 3 tours a few times over depending on what you select. There is an ending to the game though, which requires you to earn $1 million in the prize money. I didn't go for it though, reason being that it requires a lot of replaying in the same holes and tours multiple times over. I did the tournament for the Japan tour at least 6 times against opponents and only got 90,000 for giving up. I decided it really just wasn't worth it for a handful of text boxes and just finished off singles for all 3 tours. If I learned anything from the Rabbids Invasion game last year, doing the same exact thing multiple times over to progress really taints the game's quality. I didn't really want to ruin this game for me, so I just did what I felt was enough and just called it good. I recommend this game if you enjoy the Mario Golf series. You might just enjoy this game as much as the other ones. Playing basically the same game immediately afterwards. Mario Open Golf is the Famicom version of NES Open Tournament Golf. If you're wondering why it's on here as its own entry and not included alongside the NES version, well, there's a couple of reasons. First reason is that the Famicom version has content that was cut from the NES version, so it isn't really one-to-one. Another reason is it has a different progression system compared to the NES version, so playing through it wasn't the same. If anything, it's almost like a new game plus to the NES version. Its harder in difficulty has changes to some holes from the NES version. There isn't a tournament mode, but you can unlock each tour by having enough points in singles. I heard it's hard to unlock each tour, but luckily there's a special edition on the Famicom NSO that had all tours unlocked, which saved me the headache. I just played through the 90 holes and called it good. My opinions are basically the same as the NES version, so I don't have much to add on to that. I just did the 2 back-to-back to make sure it's a full experience and get closer to wrapping up the sub-series. If you have access to the Famicom version and enjoy the NES one, you'll likely enjoy this, somewhat as a new game plus experience. I decided to clear up the rest of Mario Tennis and Golf games in my backlog at the time. Mario Tennis on the Virtual Boy just kind of exists. I don't necessarily think it's a bad game considering the context around it. Being the true first Mario Tennis game, it's really lacking content. You can do singles or doubles against CPUs or do tournament mode. While that's even less than you do in Ultra Smash, at least it does have this excuse of being a tech demo along the fact that the first in the sub-series. But the gameplay is just kind of eh. It was brought on actual hardware to do 3D, which I have played before, but for this playthrough I had to emulate it, which really didn't get much of a 3D effect. The end result made the game unnecessarily harder than it needed to be due to the lack of depth. It was just hard to hit the ball most of the time. I did get kinda used to it, but still just a pain. The CPUs are kind of frustrating, even on easy, and the tests go on for stiff games or just drags the game out. If you're playing with the natural hardware, it'd be a lot better, but I probably won't even have progressed in the game if that wasn't for the save states. Overall, it's okay at best, but it's just neat for the time, and it's a lot better than Ultra Smash. This counts, right? I know this game was considered a Mario game at some point before Captain Rainbow ended up debunking it to be Osan instead of Mario, but I decided to play it anyway since I didn't have a companion title to Mario's Tennis. It's just golf. What do you really want me to say about it? It's still interesting though and good for the time it released, and I like that the holes are made for Wii Sports. It's just 18 holes so easily being in a sitting. If you want to play a relatively primitive golf game, maybe it's worth checking out. A bit of a random game, but here we are. I played Devil's World during a power outage and wasn't able to play the game that you've seen in a couple entries. I decided to knock out a couple of smaller games during the outage on my Switch and play a couple NES games. Devil's World I chose first because it's just one of those weird games. It's basically just Pac-Man but the screen is moving. It's not a long game, just a 3-level loop. It might be worth checking on the NES service, but I don't really have much opinions on it. The other NES game I played during the outage was Snake Rattle and Roll. This game looked cool at first, controlling a snake in isometric view, but it really does not work. The controls just don't feel good to play. The levels and gameplay concepts are just not taught to you and make everything confusing and frustrating. The final boss just sucks. The game from being a 7 to a 3 after each level just getting worse and worse. It really goes to show how much Rare improved after this game with Donkey Kong Country and Banjo. The game is just rough and not really worth playing at all. Alright, here's the big one. I finally tried out the Jak and Daxter series with the question on PS3. I typically include questions with only 3 or 4 games as its own entry rather than individual games. I'll talk about each of the 3 games throughout as if their own entries, starting off with Jak and Daxter, the Precursor Legacy. With Naughty Dog following on the Crash trilogy, the next game they worked on was another 3D platformer. Jak 1 is pretty interesting because it has the Crash DNA all over it while still feeling like an expansion to the concept. Having a seamless open world with multiple objectives to do kind of remind me of Crash 1 Sanity, for years before that even existed. Jak kind of controls like Crash also, even having a spin attack similar to Crash's Tornado Spin. The collectibles are a lot more enjoyable to find, and the missions are pretty fun. Not all are good. I remember some of the later worlds having some frustration with the limited health and weird platforming, but the whole process was just so fun. I ended up getting a Platinum Trophy on this game, being the first I ever gotten. I personally think this is a better first game than both Ratchet and Sly's first entries. I'd overall give the game a 9 out of 10. But then we go to Jak 2 and it took a bit of a nosedive. I knew going into it it's going to be a lot different than the first game, but stayed optimistic about it. The game goes for a more darker tone with a more GTA style gameplay structure. There's a big open city to explore with different areas to contain and variety of missions to do. You also have guns and can swear now. The game is just a weird departure from the typical platforming. I know the story behind it was just with the whole gaming industry changing overnight with GTA 3, but the fact that it changed to Jak and Daxter kinda just sucks. I would have loved a more polished continuation of Jak 1, but I should probably look at what we got instead. I don't really think it's a bad change, they made it work the best they could, but there's just still problems. The difficulty is really damn high and just makes the game so tedious. The checkpoints also really suck, they're arguably worse than Ratchet & Clank's trilogy's checkpoints. The game also crashed multiple times for some reason, and only in this game, not 1 or 3. I really don't want to hate on the game because I overall think it's a decent 7 out of 10 game. It's just when I think back on the game, the frustration show up more than what I enjoyed. In Jak 3, I hope for a bit better, but honestly it's just kinda the same as Jak 2 but for different reasons. Jak 3 follows in what Jak 2 did, but it's a bit differently structured. Half the game is now an open desert which requires ground vehicle travel on. The whole wasteland is just kinda empty and open with a few things to do with it. The other half is just a truncated version from the city from Jak 2 with similar layout and mission structure as that game. The checkpoints are kinda fixed, some missions still absolutely suck though without them. The story is kind of a mess, unlike the prior 2 games at least having consistency with theirs. I hope I still don't hate it either, I'll still say it's also a 7 out of 10 game like Jak 2, but I would rank it lower than it honestly. I really don't want to be negative about the series because it has plenty of good ideas. It had an amazing start, but just fumbled when it tried to fit into the genre that was popular at the time. It sucks, but I think Jak could have ultimately been my favorite PlayStation series if that continued to its roots, being preferred series over Sly, Crash, and Ratchet. Again, I don't want to hate what we got, it's just my opinions at the end of the day. I overall think the series might be worth checking out if it has any interest to you. However, this is only half the series, and the other half is soon to come. We're almost done with the PS3 games, I promise. Bentley's Head Pack is the final Sly Cooper game I was needing to play. I had played through the main 4 games back in 2023 and thought I'd finish all the games. though I recently found out there was a small side game that was released alongside Thieves in Time. It's an arcade-style game with families hacking minigames from throughout the series. There's twin-stick auto-scroller shooter, a top-down isometric twin-stick shooter that isn't auto-scrolling, and a motion-control marble puzzles. I didn't really care for the marble puzzles because it's not really that comfortable to control them with a 6-axis controller compared to something like a Wii remote. The twin-stick shooters are fun though, although nothing special. It's a little hard to compare this game to the others in the series because there's nothing really like them at all, outside the minigames obviously. I didn't end up getting the crest since that requires all the tokens to unlock, and a majority of the planes challenges just suck. I did play through all the puzzles though, so that basically did experience the full game. It's overall nothing special, but for $3, it's a decent side game to play alongside the other games. It's been a minute since I talked about Cutthroat, and there's a good few reasons for it. Cutthroat 2 just sucks. The puzzles are just really not fun. They're very fizz-based, which relies less on natural timing and right movements, and more just on sheer hope. So many puzzles, I had the right idea, I was doing the right thing, but sometimes just something stupid like Umnom would being pushed away due to how light he is, or not having enough swing on the rope, or just kill the run. And the missions. Oh my god, these suck. The free missions are horrible. They require so much messing around with, it's just not fun to do at all. The best way most of the time was just to use a bomb to blow up stuff towards Omnom or the candy. The third missions would also just be typically frustrating or plain stupid. The game is only around 170 levels, which is less than other games, but the missions pull this game to a drag. The worst part about the game? The damn energy meter. This would stop me so often, which is why there's a bit of gap since the holiday gift. Now this is also a problem with experiments, but there you can pay $1 to be gone with both energy and the ads. Speaking of ads, to remove them here, it costs $10 a month. Hell no, for a mobile game, especially one that I don't even like, is way too much. I talked about the subscription and time travel, but at least there you had many opportunities to get items and the game wasn't a drag. 2 is really stingy with its items. You need to watch even more ads to get them. The only real complaint I have for this game is that the new friends are interesting and do spice up the levels a bit. I don't really know why I would force myself to 100% this game. I nearly gave up multiple times while playing, but kept going since I did so with the other games. I honestly thought the series was about to hit a decline here, but then we get to the next game. Holy crap, this game's so good. It was hard to bring myself for 2, but with magic, I didn't even want to put this game down. I just traced the balance between puzzle based and figures based that just makes it some really good puzzles. The transformation gimmicks also make the puzzles even more interesting with having a plan when to use each transformation given to you. The super missions from 2, they're gone and forgotten. It's just pure level to level progression that keeps the game feeling fresh. The art style is also the best in the series in my opinion, it just looks really good. Not everything is perfect though. A lot of the later puzzles I was using hints and videos on it, but I'll admit that was more to me not being intelligent rather than just the puzzles not wanting to work into. Also, you can remove ads like before, almost $3 compared to $1, but that's still a lot more reasonable than $10 a month. Cutthroat Magic's just a really good time. It's definitely my favorite in the series and just shows how good the series can be. I fully recommend it if you like the series. I'll stop in the PS3 marathon for now. Probably, is the PlayStation move Heroes. After going through basically all of Ratchet & Clank, doing the main series of Jak and Daxter, and finish off the Sly Cooper series, why not do the crossover all 3 series to kind of wrap up everything for the console? The game is kind of weird. Using the PlayStation Move controllers, which I've only used prior for PSVR games, it's definitely made a different gameplay experience. It felt very much like a Wii Remote and Nunchuck, also having navigation control to play it. I've only heard negative things about the game prior to playing it, but honestly, it's not that bad. Of course, it's nowhere near as good as the highs of all 3 series, even at their lows. But as just a minigame collection, it's kind of fun. It does also fit missed potential, honestly. They could have done a lot more with the crossover gimmick. The story is kind of a mess. It starts with all 3 duos being brought together to compete on which one's better. Then that just gets dropped in the second world of the game. Then where the villains reveal that they're trying to destroy all 3 duos, only for them later just say that they brought them there just to collect data on them and replace their respective worlds, and just don't attempt to kill them at all. Yeah, it's not a good story, even messier than Jak 3. But the gameplay itself is pretty fun. It's kind of similar to Wii Sports minigames if you compare it to anything. Overall, it's not bad, it's just nothing really that special and could have been a lot better, honestly. Just because I'm done with the PS3 doesn't mean I'm done with the PlayStation still. Ratchet & Clank 2016 is the next stop in the series, nearing the end of it currently too. Unlike all the prior games building off each other, this game is its own retelling the original game. Meant to tie into the movie that released the same year, the game takes its own liberties rather than be identical to the original PS2 game. The controls of the game feel great, although it's a bit weird going back into it after playing the Jak and Daxter trilogy and trying to do the moves from those games. The story itself isn't anything special, kinda worse than the original. While Ratchet & Clank went from zero to hero by themselves in the original game, in 2016 he gets recruited to the Space Rangers partway into the game, doesn't really make himself as interesting due to that. Not saying his character was great in the original game either, as most of the time he's just a prick to Clank, but I felt kind of shallow compared to the original. No one's not liking the game, but just some things that I don't particularly like about it. It's a semi-remake of the original, and the roads that I recreated are pretty well translated, with very little actual change. It's a lot shorter, so I didn't feel as burnt out by the end when I got starting through the PS3 games. It also wasn't as frustrating as original PS2 games, but that's mainly due to the checkpoints and health being more polished. Overall, was a pretty decent game on its own. I enjoyed the gameplay more, but the story of the characters of the game are honestly just better than the original and not this one. I also did watch a movie showing Ash being in the game. It kinda sucks. It has its moments though, like the rest of the Sly Cooper, Jack and Daxter, and even the PS1 startup. Though I feel the game was just overall a better experience of the two as it contextualizes things a bit more. Next stop in the Jack and Daxter series is Jak X. Naughty Dog's final game for the series before moving Uncharted was a racing game similar to the Crash series. Jak X is kind of an odd game for me to rank. The gameplay itself is mostly fun. It's a bit of a different take on a kart racer with more physics-based control style. You can make navigating tracks a bit more challenging to do, but rewarding to get right, assuming the physics don't bug out at random, which did happen to me pretty often. I like how it still feels like a follow to Jak 3, even down to Daxter not wearing pants. But the story and campaign mode, whatever you rather call it, just sucks. It starts off fine with relatively simple challenges and races to do, but as you get far into the game, the more artificially difficult this game gets. The rubber bench is horrible. I'll be constantly boosting and distancing opponents, and then I'll have one small mess up and I'm all the way down in 4th place. Having to win with opponents constantly cheating to get that required gold medal is so exhausting and frustrating that it's just not fun at all. The challenges are super repetitive since in reality only like 4 race maps that get sectioned off depending on the challenge. I got about 13 hours in and gave up on the Blue Cup Grand Prix because of all the bullshit that was going on. The final take was when the game crashed on me at the end of the pre when I was in the lead. For my sanity and the safety of my PS2 controller, I stopped at that point. I just don't like the story mode at all. The story itself isn't that interesting honestly, the characters are poisoned so you have to win cups to get the antidote and that's it. I don't want to take this game, I really don't, but when the game keeps being resistant and dragging me back constantly testing my patience, I don't want to waste my time with it anymore. Casually or with friends, this game could be a lot of fun, but with the artificial difficulty the story mode throws at you, it's not fun and probably the lowest point in the series for me. At this point, it might seem like I don't want to play the series anymore with each game being less fun to me, but no, I still have the PSP games to go. Next up is the Jak and Daxter series is Daxter's solo game. Taking place right before Jak 2 fully starts, during the 2-year time frame the intro had, it follows Daxter during the time the duo was separated. It's kind of odd to me that the Daxter focus game takes place during the time gap that no one really questioned, but they made it work as much as they could. They basically just had Daxter forget about Jak for the 2-year gap until he sees him again and carry, which is a fair enough way to do it, I guess. But the actual gameplay of the game is kind of interesting. It's kind of like a mix between both Jak 1 and Jak 2. You have a more platform or close combat approach to Jak 1, while also having open, albeit truncated world concepts like Jak 2. Is it bad to say I like this game more than Jak 2 and 3 just because it's being closer to Jak 1 again? Don't get me wrong, Jak 2 and maybe 3 are more fleshed out and kind of a more engaging experience. Jak 3 really didn't piss me off as much as those 2 games did. The Bugstormer gameplay the game is focused around is actually a bit fun after a while. I also like Daxter as a character. He's pretty funny and enjoyable. I even nicknamed one of my pet guinea pigs Daxter after playing the first couple of games because of how enjoyable a character he is. Also, the other guinea pig I have is Nick Cooper, if you're wondering, which you might know where that originates from. Overall, I guess I enjoyed the game. It's probably worth playing if you want to try out the series. Final stop in the Jak and Daxter series is the Lost Frontier on PSP. So far, the currently most recent game in the series, this one is a wet, far of a way to go out. Made by High Impact, who also did the Ratchet and Clank PSP games, you can maybe tell how this game's going to go. I also forgot to mention that this game, along with Daxter, are the only 2 games not made by Naughty Dog, with Daxter being made by Ready at Dawn, which also made the God of War PSP titles. But anyways, is Lost Frontier really as people say it is? Well, kind of yes, and kind of no. Gameplay-wise, it's fine. I don't think it's broken or bad. Normal controls are the same as your games, and you have similar weapons to the previous ones. I also think the air exploration in terms of controls and feel work for the most part and feel like a good next step for the city and desert exploration that Jak 2 and 3 had. But the objectives and missions of the game just suck for the most part. The air combat is ass. It's not fun when you have stuff shooting at you constantly and you go down easily from it. Multiple air missions were just hell because the game going overkill with the turrets shooting at you. And the road missions will also be tedious. Due to being on the PSP, having to switch between ecos and weapons during combat is so uncomfortable and awkward to do. Story just sucks also, not in the messy way Jak 3 was, but it's just not as interesting and the most plot points were even all that memorable. Yeah, I'm wearing the cement very shortly after finishing the game. Also, Daxter just turns dark similar how Jak does in prior games. I don't hate the segments, but the only thing I think of when playing them was the Crash Media games for some reason. Overall, the game isn't that great, but I do think people rip this game apart more than it really deserves. I don't know if I'll ever replay it, maybe the PS2 version if I got access to it, but even then I still don't know. And that wraps up the series. What a roller coaster of emotions. But other than that, the PlayStation Marathon I've been playing the past couple months is finally over with. I'm exhausted, but I'm also kind of glad to be back playing the usual Nintendo stuff for a bit. Next up, the Mario Party series is arguably the best one. Let me in the comments if you like. While there's definitely some nostalgia bias for me, I generally think this is one of the best and more unique games in the sub-series, considering what came afterwards took a massive dip. The story mode is actually really good, which I'm typically not a fan of with these games. The whole idea is the characters being shrunken down to basically the size of Lego or Pikmin characters, and boards of minigames taking advantage of that is actually so genius. The touch controls work good for the most part, some minigames kind of suck on, but whatever. Well, yeah, honestly, the worst part of this game is the piranha plant fight from the first board of the game. It's legitimately one of the worst and most frustrating parts of the series, at least so far, and I hate it so much. Oh my god, it sucks so much. But other than that, this is just a fantastic game. The side modes are also cool. Using puzzles from the party games, those touching mechanics is cool. There's also collectibles similar to Mario Party 7, which is cool, I guess. But yeah, Mario Party DS is just such a great time. Even nostalgia bias aside, it's a very well-rounded game in the series and definitely worth playing. After you played Mario Super Picross back in 2023 while playing through a bunch of SNES games on NSO, I ended up only doing the Mario puzzles. I didn't have the motivation to do the Wario puzzles afterwards, and just put on my completion log as is. But after finishing Mario's Picross on the Game Boy last year, I had a bit more of a push to go back to this one. If you saw my thoughts from last year's videos, they're basically the same here. It's just Picross, but with some slight Mario themes, which is good and addicting. However, with the Wario puzzles that I did this time, things work a little different. Instead of having a time limit and being notified when you make a mistake, you just have to figure it out yourself while the timer ticks up, making more of an endurance mode. Basically, it's just how Picross is played normally outside of video games, so there's that. There's actually a mode like this in the Game Boy game, but I didn't bother playing just because it was random what puzzle you would have gotten. You couldn't choose which one you wanted, I just wanted the game done with at that point. But yeah, I'm gonna be completely honest, my brain isn't smart enough for these puzzles. I did as much as I could without any help. There would be times where I'd use a guide just to put me on the right track. I think the mode is still good, but I didn't find it as addicting as the regular Mario Picross. There's also a bunch of puzzles, just different sections of Mario's body, which I thought was funny. But yeah, I don't really have much else to say on the game. It's just Picross, it only goes so far as what I can say. It's still a good game, and I know it has only to do with 300 puzzles included. He also told me while I beat the game to start a new job around the same time, and I was working about 12-hour days typically, so I just didn't have as much time to play. And that did affect the next game on the list, but luckily my hours lightened up over time, so it wasn't as much of a continuous issue. But overall, Mario Super Picross is a pretty fun time. Next game in the Zelda series is the Wind Waker. I feel very indifferent about this game, to be honest. Let me get a lot of the good stuff out of the way first, though. The art style looks very good and still holds up very well after all these years, even on original hardware. The gameplay is also really solid, feeling like a good continuation of the 64 controls. The characters, the story, the puzzles for the most part, is also charming and great. But there are some things that hold the game back compared to the N64 Duo. The wind sailing honestly got pretty boring after the first couple times of doing it. After a bit, I would just aim the boat to the direction it needed to go, and I'd just do something else steering them. Even with the Battle of Gales to warp around, it just still was boring at times. I also just had more frustration with some puzzles and enemies throughout the game compared to the N64 Duo. Maybe just because I played this on the actual hardware, while in N64 Duo I played on SO with save states, which helped relieve a bit of frustration with those ones. I already knew the game was coming to Switch 2 on SO, but I had no idea if I was going to Switch 2 at launch, and just wanted to play the game already, so I didn't have the luxury of save states. Maybe most of these frustrations would be less than when I play the HD version, but for the GameCube version, I just had a bit rougher of a time. Overall, it's a nice and charming game, but I felt kind of disappointed after how much I enjoyed the N64 Duo. Also, the Wind Waker baton just wasn't as fun to play with as compared to the Ocarina. It's not that much of a knock on the game, I just thought it was fun to mess with the instrument in the N64 games. The game also took me exactly a month to beat. I started the same day I will finish Lost Frontier. The reason it took me a while is because it's a game that I just sit down for a couple hours at a time to really progress in. Instead of working pretty much the entire day most of the time, I just didn't have much time to come home, pick up and play it. I would usually just save the game for weekends or days I had multiple hours to spare. But yeah, it's not a bad game, just I had my issues with it. With having Wind Waker finished, there was nothing holding me back from ripping tearing into this game. Doom the Dark Ages is the most recent entry in the Doom series and follows in the footsteps of 2016 Eternal styles. The game actually takes place before both of those games, which is a bit easier to work with considering how Eternal's DLC ended. The gameplay does have a few changes though. The shield first off is a pretty cool and versatile tool to use. With it being a shield, you can block and parry attacks, which is fine enough, although not something that would seem necessary for a Doom game. Though the game does make it work because that preset difficulties, you end up just being a damage sponge and constantly going to low health, so using that shield to block attacks helps a good bit. It also functions like a weapon, with a bunch of saw blades on it, so you can just be like Limp Bizkit and pack a chainsaw and skin their ass raw. I'm sorry about that. But yeah, they made it a feature that seemed kind of controversial at first, feel like a natural part of the game. The game overall is a bit slower than the prior two games without adjusting setting sliders, that is. Though I like this slightly slower speed because it makes you feel like a walking tank just demolishing everything around you. The mech and dragon levels were alright in my opinion. There's not many of them, so they don't really outstay their welcome, but nothing I really needed for the game. It's also just some same moments in the game. The only layer has I don't really want to spoil anything of it. I know opinions on this game have been mixed, with some people saying it's the best in the series, while others saying it's just straight up bad. I'm on the side of this being amazing, quite honestly, probably my favorite in the series, even being my game of the year at the time. Granted, there wasn't much competition yet. Overall, Doom the Dark Age is just a fantastic game, and a must play if you like the series. All it took was one last renewal listening to a handful of Offspring albums to kickstart my interest into the series. Crazy Taxi, the game I've always known about, even played a few times the arcade version at restaurants and arcades before, though I'd never really gotten the hang of the game or just understood it right. Then one day during work, I decided to listen to Offspring's Americana, Conspiracy 1, and Smash albums, and just had them stuck in my head. Woke up the following morning and had a strong urge to play Crazy Taxi. I luckily had the GameCube version ready to play, so I just started that up and had a blast. I sucked at first, though I think most people also did when they first played, and I still do even finishing the game. Though after a while, I started to get better and finally got an S-Rank license. I personally prefer the original map than the arcade map, just because it felt a lot easier to navigate and go around full speed, while the arcade map was just a bit more headache to actually navigate. The game technically doesn't have an end, but you get credits for getting S-Rank, so I just count that, I guess. But the pure chaos of the game, with a mix of fast speeds, crazy tricks, and the game blasting the Offspring and bad religion songs just made the game an addictive experience. And with the new game coming up on the horizon, I decided to try playing through the games before then. Overall, this is probably one of Sega's best franchises. I just want to go back Crazy Taxi. The Nintendo Switch 2 Welcome Tour is sure one way I got introduced to the new console. I ended up picking this game up on launch alongside the console instead of Mario Kart World, which is a story for a different time. The Welcome Tour just sucks, and you probably already knew that. It's not really much of an actual game, to be fair, and it wasn't necessarily trying to be a complete game. It was meant to just be an interactive instruction manual, pretty much, and teach you about the system. I think that's cool and all, but why did they make it $10? And on top of that, why they require you to spend nearly $100 to fully play through the game? This definitely should have been a packing game, or at least $5 with required accessories non-mandatory. There's a good amount of minigame with tech demos, but most of which just either sucked to begin with or weren't really all that interesting. There were a few I liked though, like a handheld mode one that was basically just twister with your fingers. I thought that was at least more creative, even though it can be pretty frustrating and unfair. The quizzes also suck. I hated those. The information stations I thought at least had some merit to them, giving you some more decent information and answering legitimate questions I had about the system. They got so repetitive and boring after a while that the only thing that kept me going was that they would call back previous Nintendo things like Satellaview or WarioWare Twisted for some reason. Yeah, this game is just boring and sucks. Don't buy it and it's not worth your time or money. Now for the true Switch 2 experience begins. Yeah, Mario Kart World is amazing. What can I really say different? There's a few things I want to throw my hand to about this game though. The Grand Prix is amazing, it's awesome tracks like DK Spaceport, Boost Imma, and the new Rainbow Road. The whole concept of driving to the next course after each race is pretty cool, it just makes it a unique style for the series. Though I think only having the last lap or two of each race just beat the course, while the first part of it being driving to the course just gives each track less room to breathe, and also making a handful of tracks not as memorable due to the last time spent on them. The character selection is awesome because I got to play as Contour, and any game with Contour is awesome. The costume mechanic is cool, although a bit of a headache to lock them all. Same applies to unlocking all the lesser enemy racers. The free roam was pretty cool, though I didn't find a whole lot to actually do in it outside the missions and else to find. And then there's Knockout Tour. I hate this mode a lot. This is coming from offline play point of view with trying to get all 3-star rankings, so it's going to be a bit different depending on who you ask, and even me if I played online instead. But I just hated Knockout Tour offline because there's so much bullshit that happens, and not in the funny Mario Kart way. When the opponents just rubber bands you, because why the hell not, and make it damn near impossible at times to get first on all laps, it's just bad. And with the facts against CPUs, there's no friendly rivalry between them, it just makes garbage unnecessary. There's no one gaining anything from that point, it's just to piss me off. After hours of trying to get 3 stars on 150cc and not getting any, I just gave up and did the bare minimum on 50cc. The single player mode just pretty much killed my chance of 100%ing the game, which I was actually wanting to do before I notched this mode. but that interest is gone now because I'm just sick of the junk like this and wants to keep throwing at me. Despite all of that, I don't want to hold this game down, how amazing the game actually is. It's not my favorite in the series honestly, but it's still such a great time and leap forward for the series, not counting Knockout toward garbage. Nintendo adding virtual game cards to the Switch, I decided to try it out first with Yoshi's Crafted World. It's a game I want to play for a while since I played Wii World back in 2020, but just never got around to actually getting it. But now with the new sharing feature, I was able to borrow it from Period 7, who had it digitally, so thanks to him. I decided to quickly knock it out with borrowing it due to the short time that game cards have, so I moved to a top priority. After finishing it, it was just okay. Is it a bad game? No, it's still a really solid game. It has a good feel charm to it. But compared to Wii World, it just a step back and wasn't much of a fan of. The game doesn't really use the arts and crafts aspects as much as I feel like Wii World and Creator's Epic Yarn did. It just felt a bit more of a traditional Yoshi game with some crafty elements thrown in. The world progression is just real weird also. The first bit of the game is just a few linear worlds, which makes sense. Then the whole middle of the game is just a big area with multiple branching worlds to go to. And then afterwards it goes back to a few linear worlds to the final boss. It just felt off as it didn't feel like it knew it wanted to be a linear game or if it wanted to be a figuratively crafted or own adventure. Also, it's very likely just a problem for me, but I tend to feel fatigued with Yoshi games a lot faster than I do with like Mario, Donkey Kong, or Wario Land games for example. I think it's just because of the slower pace of games, but it's something I just have with almost the whole Yoshi series. Overall though, it's a decent game and a fun playthrough. It just feels like a step down from Wii World, which was a great time. A bit of an unusual game to land to my priority, but I've actually had a bit of interest in this game since it was originally announced. I missed out on it originally back in 2023, mainly because they released it a week after Pikmin 4, which is my main focus for a while. But in May of this year, the game got a new update with Scrooge McDuck and got ported to PlayStation, Xbox, and Steam. So I decided to try out the game finally, and after finishing it, it's a pretty solid game. Developed by Diwawa, who also developed the Battletoads 2020 game, which I played back in 2024, they really did justice how good Disney cartoons can look. I like a good amount of classic Mario Disney cartoons like Chip and Dale, DuckTales, even Mickey Mouse shorts from the 2010s. And this game just feels like it's oozing the charm of those cartoons had. The gameplay feels like a mix of a Metroidvania with Rayman Origins and Legends, with the Disney coat of paint on it. The game pacing's a bit slow. I kinda wish there was a way just the game speed or we just have a run button. Though it was a ditch to play. I legitimately didn't want to put the game down because how fun it was to explore and how smooth the characters were. The cutscenes are also a big highlight, with the characters being so charming and well represented. There were a few times the game actually got some laughs out of me. The new Scrooge McDuck update is also kind of interesting because it's basically just Shovel Knight Dig, which I thought was just kind of funny. I actually was thinking about doing 100%, but after finishing the credits, I just decided I was ready to move on to the next game. So this might be a game I might return to at some point to get everything. Overall though, if you like slower paced games and or Metroidvanias, along with charming Disney aspects, you'll probably really like this game. Next stop in the Ratchet & Clank series is Rift Apart. It actually took me a bit to play this game compared to the others since I actually don't have a console to play it on. I actually own the game on PS5 since I found it at a yard sale, but just don't have the actual system to play it. Luckily the game was half off during the Steam summer sales, so I was able to just borrow a Steam Deck from my friend the Nerd Broadcast. I probably could have tried to run on my laptop, but I'm not sure it's nothing to even attempt to run it, so the Steam Deck it is. But the game overall is pretty good. I honestly don't have a whole lot new to say, really, just because it does follow the prior games pretty closely in terms of gameplay and structure. Riven and Kay are pretty good characters, it will feel good counterparts of Ratchet & Clank. The story is pretty well done, and makes me like the new characters a whole lot. The gameplay is arguably the most polished it's ever been. The Clank and Rivet sessions are also pretty good, which can be said for a few games in the series, and are just good puzzle gimmicks areas. I don't think it's my favorite game in the series though. I figure Crack Time still holds up in that position. But it's just a great return to the series since Nexus, considering 2016 really wasn't connected to the series all that much. I did have some performance issues on Steam Deck though, which probably isn't as apparent on the PS5 or higher end PCs, but it got the job done for the most part. Overall, the game's just pretty great and worth playing if you have a way to. Next up in the series is Crazy Taxi 2. The game is actually a pretty good improvement to the first one to make it stand out and just not feel a complete copy and pasted. First off, there's the jump button, which makes navigation so much better and more fun. It's legitimately amazing how much a simple addition just makes the game so much better. The maps are good, though honestly not as memorable as the original game. It felt very NYC focused, which made it feel more cramped with the city aesthetics. The new characters also aren't as memorable as the original. They have the same crazy exaggeration as the originals, but I just don't have the same kind of charm as them. Despite that, I think the game's overall a good improvement from the original. There's also a lot more offspring in the soundtrack. In fact, almost the entire soundtrack is just their music. The only ones that aren't are just Method of Mayhem music for the character select and credits theme, which are just the instrumentals. The game is for the most part exclusive to Dreamcast, other than the PSP version, which isn't really the preferred way to play. Luckily for me, I got a Dreamcast and may or may not have burnt the game along some other games onto a disc since the prices of most Dreamcast games are insane. But anyways, Crazy Taxi 2 will give you one fine day. Yeah, this is game of the year for me. I'm just going to clarify that now. Bonanza is an absolute masterpiece. To bring Donkey Kong back after a decade hiatus, make it a 3D platform after over 25 years since the last one, follow the framework of Mario Odyssey, and make it a top 10 Nintendo game, probably even top 5, is just insane. I was excited and sold on the game from the minute it was announced, even more than Mario Kart World, and the game just delivered on everything. The worlds are very creative and diverse, giving most of them their own personalities that contrast Odyssey's worlds for the most part. The controls are perfectly smooth and just feel as good as Mario's movement in Odyssey while still feeling unique and different. Everything being instructable makes puzzles have so many different solutions and just makes exploring so much fun. I know it kind of sounds like a typical IGN reviewer at this point, but they have a point for once. This game is just mastercrafted to be an ultimate sandbox game. Armor percent is also fun for the most part. Some puzzles get really repetitive and grind for chips to reach maximum nails with just muscle memory doing the same challenge over 100 times at least. I just didn't want to put the game down, although I kind of had to if I want decent sleep for work the following day. Eating every banana fossil is just pure fun and addicting. It's just the perfect leveler to the Donkey Kong series. It will make any fan, casual or diehard, just love what the game has to offer. Donkey Kong Bonanza is completely worth it, and probably a lot more of a system seller for the Switch 2 than Mario Kart World, although not throwing hate towards that game. After I finished up like Kingdom, Tennis, and Golf, I decided to move on to the next set of Mario Sports games. Kicking off the set is Super Mario Strikers for the GameCube. It was cool that this released on Switch Online pretty much at the same time I tended to play it, so that was very convenient. I have a bit more experience with Strikers than most other Mario Sports games, having charged when I was younger, albeit not playing it much, and getting Battle League around launch, which that sure happened, didn't it? But I've never really done much with the original games, so I guess now is my chance. Overall, I think it's a fun time. It feels kind of tame, especially after seeing how charged it is, although it still feels a lot more badass side of Mario that Battle League just pretty much lost. I played through all the regular and special cups, and that was kind of it since there's not much to do other than those. The game just has a bit of pang the more you do the tournaments, which is why it took a bit longer to do. Like, some of the Super Cups having 14 rounds of fighting, the same couple teams just dragged on, even on the shortest time limit. But it still stayed fun for the most of the time, and it felt kinda nice to get used to controls and everything. Although the goalies pissed me off at times. Overall though, it was a fun time. I might see myself coming back to play it casually. And the follow-up Strikers is a sister series of Sluggers, or baseball I guess. There aren't enough games to really fully call it Sluggers, so I guess I don't know if baseball works. Superstar Baseball is a bit of a conflicting game for me. The presentation I feel like was leagues better than Strikers, which kind of felt rough around the edges with how it felt displayed. There's also a lyrical track for some reason, which I thought was really cheesy, but I think it's kind of funny and I like it. But I just did not like the gameplay that much. It just felt like that nothing was really hitting or working the way it should. Like, at times it definitely looked like I hit the ball or swung at the right time, but it just didn't count as a hit. If I did hit it, it would barely go anywhere. And I practiced the settings for a good while and was getting decent at it, but I just not doing anything properly. From when I played with Sluggers in the past, that one felt more right with controls and accuracy of hits, which set my expectations high for the prior game. It's likely just a skill issue, so that's my fault, but it just wasn't a fan of it. I only did one playthrough of the story mode just because I couldn't bring myself to do it 4 times. That's some Sonic Heroes bullshit there. But overall, I don't necessarily think it's a bad game, but I'm just not really a fan of it. Probably my least favorite of the GameCube Mario Sports games, not counting SSX or NBA Street. This might be my Game of the Year runner-up. Torii Center is just such a good game. The other Torii games all good short times, except Panpack kinda sucks. With Saturn, this could compete with some of the best speed-based platformers. The game is pretty short, the story taking me about 20ish minutes, which kinda sucks for taking a couple years to come out, but the gameplay is just so fun. It's fluid and has a great sense of speed, especially with Torii just running by default. Torii also has a homing attack, which makes him move across levels at great speeds, just hitting anything that's comes in his path. He also has the drop dash, which is fun to just spam and move around. The game just also has a lot more Sonic vibes, especially in the music. I won't spoil anything, but some of the lyrics game stuff just make any Sonic fan happy. This game is only $5, which is more than all the other Torii games, but it's definitely worth the price. Play it, it's a great time. It took a couple months, but I finally got around to playing chapters 3 and 4. Deltarune is a great game, if you didn't already know that from Twitter shoving your face on a daily basis. And I've been looking forward to the new chapters since 2019. it's been a slow handful of years. And to do that, I've actually decided to play chapters 1 and 2 alongside 3 and 4, just kind of refresh myself since it's been a handful of years. Gameplay wise, the game's pretty fun and kind of similar to Undertale. While the combat works a little differently, the general idea of everything stays the same, just you don't drastically affect anything depending on what you do. You can spare everyone like a pacifist route, which is what I did, or you can just kill everyone just because. Outside of chapter gimmicks, the gameplay basically stays the same, though each chapter has some stuff to talk about. I'll keep away from spoilers though. Chapter 1 feels the most vanilla of the current chapters, because just trying to pull into the game and really get used to everything before going over the top like the later chapters. The setting being in tabletop games is pretty charming, has a lot of cool characters introduced. Chris is pretty blunt, similar to Frisk in Undertale. Susie's a bit of an ass in the chapter, but that's kind of the point of her character in the story. It becomes a lot more likable throughout the chapters. Ralsei's pretty cool, being the more straightforward one of the bunch, wanting to make everything right while having some fun. There's also Lancer. The first chapter overall doesn't have too much to talk about though, it's just a nice introduction to the game. Chapter 2 however, is maybe my favorite chapter of the bunch. The technological setting of the chapter is a lot cooler and honestly and just sticks with me more. There's a lot more gimmicks included that I liked a lot more and just found more fun. The Queen, Noelle, and I guess Birdwee are also some pretty good characters, making their relations to the main characters in each are pretty entertaining. The final boss of chapter I also really like, being a reference to a classic NES game. Chapter 3 being based on a game show is pretty fun and all the challenges they have are pretty cool. And when it gets to the Zelda style segments, those are pretty fun to play through. Ten is an entertaining character, just making me think of Steve Harvey the entire time he was on screen. I didn't really enjoy it as much as I did with chapter 2, but it's pretty close behind. Chapter 4 however, this is a bit slower of a chapter. It's still a great time, but it focuses a lot more on story, which causes it to feel a bit more of a space breaker. Gerson helps tie a lot of the chapter together, being a nice comic relief character, while also having some pretty strong moments that the prior chapters didn't really reach. But I don't know my favorite, it's just overall a great time. But yeah, that's kind of the summary of the first half of the game. Chapter 5 is supposedly coming out in 2026, I forget to believe that. So expect Deltarune to show up a few more times throughout the years, though probably not these first 4 chapters every time. Overall, Deltarune is just a fantastic game so far and definitely worth playing. With the DLC out, I jumped right into playing it, in contrast to taking forever with the Deltarune. Kirby and the Forgotten Land is just an amazing game. I didn't actually play the main story for this entry since I just replayed it back in late 2024, so it felt too soon to do it again, but it's still recent enough, I guess. To summarize my thoughts on the main story, it's a great time. Kirby had just a perfect jump to 3D. The levels, the gameplay, the character, and just the overall vibe of everything is just so well done, which all that carries over to the new DLC. Starcross World feels like a post-game to the main game, or I guess a second post-game since it already was a post-game. The story is about a meteor that crashes into the Forgotten Land and releases a bunch of alien star things to find and collect, similar to the Wild Deeds of the main game. There's only 12 levels, which are just added versions of existing levels, which kinda sucks, but they do feel changed enough to make it worth playing through it all. The game isn't too long, only took me a couple hours to beat it, then just a few more to finish 100%ing it. The late game does have some pretty awesome stuff though, which is worth playing to see. Also, the new Arena Cup kinda sucks. Holy shit, that was hell. There's not really too much else to talk about honestly, it's just a nice extension of the main game. Hopefully we can get another full-on 3D game in the next couple years, who knows. Anyways, if you enjoyed the main game, this DLC is definitely worth checking out. Another series I've been holding off for a while is Shantae. I meant to start the series in the middle of spring, but here we are in early fall. Starting off the first game on the Game Boy Color, the original Shantae hits the ground running. The game has shown its age a bit, with being the early 2000s handheld platformer. Stylistically, the game's pretty good on the system it was on. I'm not saying that for the, let's say, style character designs. Gameplay-wise, it's also pretty fun. I feel like it makes a Wario Land, more so one in Virtual Boy, and a Zelda game. The game is pretty tough, having a good amount of one-hit death areas. Though I did have some save states available, so that makes it a bit more tolerable. The different transformations are also pretty cool and pretty useful throughout the game. I overall enjoyed the game, though the random garbaging it throughout you does kind of hold it back for me though. But it still is just a decent game, probably worth playing. I mean, yeah, why not? Princess Peach Showtime is fine, I guess. Originally released in 2024, I actually ended up passing on it during its launch window, mainly just not having extra money at the time. And after seeing the reception of it being good but nothing great, I just never ended up going back to get it. Then earlier in 2025, I found it half price at a yard sale, so I decided to bite the bullet. And after playing it, it's just a fine game. I don't really have much to say on it. I do like the concept it has, which makes each character Peach has to play pretty unique. I also like how the game is presented like a stage play, which is continuing with the vibes the good few games have with arts and crafts. But the gameplay is just pretty bland. Now I'm fully aware that I'm not the target demographic for this game, but the game also is a Mario game, so I'm going to play it anyways. I don't think the gameplay is necessarily bad or anything, but it's just dull after a while. The game isn't that long, luckily, but still a bit of a drag for not fully into it. I don't want to turn people away from this game because they might like it. It just wasn't for me personally, my least favorite game from Good Feel. Overall, it's just fine. Well, I'm at that point in the Mario Party series. Mario Party 9 is just there. Everybody knows the car mechanic at this point. It kinda sucks. There's no point going that much into it. It has this moments like where you can just screw over opponents by going to the tars, but it also just really screws you over just as easily. I think the board themes were good though and feel decently varied despite having new Super Mario Bros. Vibes. The mini games though were actually pretty good. Not many of them I say actually weren't that fun. The overall might be better than the A's mini game selection honestly, mostly just because of better polish. But when the board gameplay time everything together just isn't that fun, it can really drag the game back a good amount. Luckily, it's just a one-time thing and we move on from the cars. We're back, and it's time for more craziness. Next game in the Crazy Taxi series jumps to Xbox. I know that I played the first one on GameCube, but it's still a Dreamcast game, so shush. And the power jump does show a lot. Visually, the game looks amazing. More details, shading, and other visual treats compared to the first Dreamcast games. And the gameplay is mostly the same, more so how it was in 2. But now there's some more visual indicators that make it more easier to use your moveset efficiently. Having the tires flare when you drift or power boost makes it more satisfying pull off speeds knowing that it's working compared to the first few games. There's only one new map though, Witter Gulch. I wish there was more new stuff, but West Coast and Small Apple from 1 and 2 respectively show up, which gives it more content than the prior games. Getting S ranks are a bit more easier, which is good compared to the headaches the first 2 games can be. I was able to get S rank on West Coast, which I couldn't in the original game, despite hours of trying. In Witter Gulch I was just able to S rank half an hour. Small Apple on the other hand, I didn't like in Crazy Taxi 2, and I still don't like it here. The map's just very claustrophobic and pain to navigate compared to the other 2 maps. This is the only map I didn't S-rank because after hours of trying, the best it gave was like 3,000 despite multiple different routes. The challenge mode was going good though, until I spent 45 minutes on the bowling challenge after suffering an hour and a half prior on the second row of challenges, and got pushed past my breaking point when a single pin left at the last second and now I'm out of Xbox controller. At that point, that's when I saw it call it good on the game. Despite that, I still think it's probably the best game in the series so far, despite being the race original game. Definitely worth playing if you have run out Xbox and stay away from the bowling challenge. Next game in the Shantae series is the newest game, despite technically being the second game. Shantae Advance is an interesting story. Originally meant for the Game Boy Advance in 2004 as a sequel to the Game Boy Color game, it ended up being cancelled. Then back in 2023, they decided to just go back and finish it. Now it's here in 2025, being the true sequel despite being the 6th game in the series also. It makes more sense to me to play through the games chronologically, which makes it fit better here than at the very end. But other than that, how's the actual game? In short, it's pretty damn good. The gameplay is pretty similar to the Game Boy Color game for the most part. The game isn't as open, but it's probably for the better since they made its progression a lot smoother. There's a bit less in the game, like only 3 dungeons compared to 4 from the Game Boy Color game. There's also a couple main dungeons, so it does balance out kind of. The difficulty is also toned down, which is good since the original got a bit ruthless at times, but the game still poses a bit of a challenge. The game overall is a lot better than the original, and hopefully it gets better from here. Definitely worth playing, whether it be from the more remastered-ish Mario console versions, or the GBA version since we somehow got a GBA physical game in 2025. Finally back to the Zelda series, I decided to step off the main series and do a couple spin-offs with the Four Swords duo. Starting off with the regular Four Swords, I have the Anniversary Edition on the DSi because I couldn't really find enough people to play through the GBA version with me, and it was just the overall whatever experience. I didn't necessarily hate it, but I really didn't like it as much as I figured I should have. So role play is just pretty clunky and felt like a constant juggling act, and there also wasn't much going on story-wise, so it was a lot harder to keep invested. I only did a single playthrough, even though I did tend to do all 3 playthroughs. It was mainly just the key thresholds requirements that kept me from doing the replays, which kinda sucked because I did want to see those retro style stages. Maybe if I played the game with others, my opinion would be a lot different. Just on this playthrough though, not the biggest fan. Now this is a whole lot better. Four Sword Adventure is just a pure fun time, even in solo play. While still a bit clunky at times, it feels a whole lot nicer to control compared to the DSi Anniversary Edition. The concept of taking an SNES style game with enhancements only possible for more advanced systems is pretty interesting. And having the GBA be a big part of the game also makes it really unique. I didn't have a GBA or a link cable to use it, but the game does emulate GBA screen in solo mode, so you're not missing out much on the enjoyment. The game also being level structured also made it a lot more digestible for me playing shorter sessions. Each level typically has unique ideas to keep the game feeling fresh, although there is some repetition a bit further into the game. The game overall just doesn't take itself too seriously, and feels like a more classic State of Princess story that Link to the Past and the original NES game had, which I like. I might be blaming Skin of Life for this, but I kinda like the game a bit better than Wind Waker, honestly. While Wind Waker is overall just a great game, and probably a whole lot better than this game, I just would rather choose Four Swords for the GameCube Zelda game. I think if I had more people to play with, it would have been even more fun, but that's kind of a bit of a headache to set up. Overall though, Four Swords Adventure is just a great time. Back to the PSP, just because I can't escape this damn thing. Sonic Rivals 2 is a decent follow-up to the first game in the system. I did play through the first game in 2024 and wrote a short review like it in that video, so check that out if you want to after this. For how the sequel holds up, it's kind of the same honestly. The production value is a bit better, although still feel a bit cheap. The levels and worlds feel very varied though, which makes them all stand out. And having 4 new characters, which being Tails, Rouge, Espio, and Metal Sonic, does make it feel a bit more interesting. But that also means 8 different stories to play through, which is a bit more insane than Sonic Heroes. Okay, I know it's not required to do all 8 stories. You could probably just do one of each duo and experience the whole game, or even just a single playthrough if you don't care at all about the story. But I knew if I didn't do all 8, I'll be wanting to come back to this game at some point, or just rather get it done now and not have to think about it later. I shouldn't knock the game though because of that. It's my fault for doing it. Luckily, the game only does take about like an hour or so for each playthrough, but it still does add up. Even then, I feel like the game doesn't do too much there from the first game, it just feels like an extension to it more so. There are some new gimmicks still, like the rival battles and different modes like Bomb Tag and Ring Collect. But overall, it's a fine time, maybe worth playing if you have a PSP. After playing Star Cross Worlds, I was still in a bit of a mood to play Kirby, so I decided to play one of my first Kirby games with a more recent remake. Return to Dreamland Deluxe is a pretty solid remake. The art style is pretty interesting looking, feeling similar to the cancelled GameCube game, and the new additions are pretty cool, though I want to first talk about the main story. The game is pretty much identical to the Wii version, although there's a few changes. There's some new elemental enemies that give you new power-ups like Sand and Mech, which don't add too much to the game, but are cool new additions. There's also tickets you can collect, which is for the new Style mode, but other than that, it's just the same game, which is pretty solid. It has become one of my lesser favorites of the modern Kirby games, even with nostalgia bias, although I haven't played Star Allies, which I heard was the weakest in the modern Kirby. Still a great time, and ideas like super abilities are good to use, though I do think Triple Deluxe for Final Robot ultimately succeeded it. Anyways, now for the new stuff. Starting with Magwar Epilogue, the game is kind of a different take for a Kirby game. You play as Magwar instead of Kirby, which I guess could be expected from the title, but he doesn't have any copy abilities or type controls like Kirby does. He has his own moves and power-ups that you have to make stronger, like a bit of a roguelike style game. The levels are a bit shorter than the main game and also more focused on defeating enemies to collect magic points. The endgame is also typical Kirby fashion with some insane stuff, though I don't want to spoil it. I kind of like the recent trend of remakes having side modes with kind of darker stories, with more badass elements like Bowser's Fury and Shadow Generations. There's also Merry Megaland, which is just a minigame area. Some minigames return from the original, while there's some others from previous Kirby games, which are kind of interesting. It's fun to mess around in, but not much to talk about there. Overall, it's a great time, good for people who played the original or just want to be introduced to the series. Next stop in the Shantae series is Shantae 2, or I mean 3. It's a bit weird with Risky Revolution being kind of Shantae 2 now. Risky's Revenge is a pretty decent time. It feels like a natural evolution from the Game Boy card game, fixed up a lot of the stupid junk the original game had. The game is a good bit more streamlined, make it feel less of a headache to figure out where to go next and deal with everything that game throws at you. It's also a really strong comparison to the original game, taking less than 6 hours to beat, where the original game took a good bit longer despite not tracking the time. Though I feel like it didn't do that much interesting for a sequel. I don't think it helps that I played this after Risky Revolution, which did a whole lot more than I liked. But it also isn't fair to compare the two of them either, because Risky Revolution technically released until much later. It just has to be placed before Risky's Revenge, is why I had higher hopes for this one. It does seem like it's a common opinion that Risky's Revenge is a lesser favorite among fans, so I didn't want that to affect my opinion personally. But like gameplay wise and everything, it's just mostly the same, just feels a lot more nicer and polished. Overall, it's definitely improvement to the Game Boy card game, but doesn't reach the heights the series had already shown with games like Risky Revolution, but it's still definitely worth playing regardless. So a bit on a surprising release this year as a remake to Pac-Man World 2. I mean, people had a strong feeling this was going to happen back in 2022 when the original game remake was announced, so that was to be expected. The original Pac-Man World 2 is a bit controversial for me. The game has good presentation ideas and overall just a decent game, but after the second road, the game just goes to hell and it's not fun. Whether it's clunky ice levels, slow water score levels, or the shitty lava levels, the original game just gave me so many problems and frustrations. So with this remake, I was hoping the issues would be fixed, and I will say for the most part, they were rectified. Kind of. First off, the game looks a lot nicer and falls more in line with the presentation of the first game's remake. And for the levels that gave me issues, they're better, but not perfect, but a whole lot more tolerable now. The game spams checkpoints, which is a bit pathetic, but it's also a lot more of a headache avoider, so I think they're at least fine to have. The lava world is nowhere near as hellish as it originally was, and the water world has been completely changed to be so much better. The bosses have been completely replaced with new, original ideas compared to the original just being the same ghost mech for all bosses other than the first one. Also, minor spoilers I guess, but there's a post-game ad which has a good bit of stuff to do, about half the length of the main story. It has some cool stuff to make it worth playing. Though the final boss and throughout the whole post game, I did switch to easy mode because the game just really ramps up difficulty, just not like to give you any breaks. Let me know what you like, but if I was going to try to enjoy this game anyway, this is the way I was going to have to go. Overall, I think Pac-Man Road 2 Repack is a pretty good remake that fixes some issues the original had while also being a bit painful to actually do everything in. I've seen people complain about the $30 price tag not being worth it, but personally, this remake does plenty just make it feel a lot more worth it, especially compared to some other 3 platformers on the market currently. If you're interested, I would definitely say this game's worth picking up. Next up, the Mario Strikers game is the Wii sequel. I've had a bit more experience with charging in comparison to most of our Mario Sports games. I did own it for a while when I was younger, but just didn't play a whole lot. Then after I got rid of it at some point, I had the issue to play it. I did play it by totally legal means, trust me on that. I've gotten a bit more acclaim with it. And when Battle Week was coming out, I did play a bit more to prefer myself, so I do know a bit more about it than the others. Gameplay wise, it's pretty similar to the GameCube game. It's the over the top, badass soccer that the sub-series is known for, just now with some Wii gimmicks. With some special shots, you can get up to 6 points in a single goal in comparison to the 2 you can get in the first game. Though as a goalie, you have to use the Wii cursor to stop as many shots as possible, which can be a bit finicky about that, so it can suck. The extreme of the game is also turned up a whole lot, with the special shots having more menacing appearances to them, the characters' redesigns, and overall just presentation feeling like everyone's out for blood. The cup modes kinda suck though. I got through the fire cup no problem, but the crystal cup did not want to hold back any punches. And after being screwed over sudden death in the semifinals, I decided enough. It's unusual and a bit premature for me to quit a game there early on, but I would have been doing the same exact thing anyways for the rest of the game. From what I read, the Strikers Cup is pure hell, so that was going good before I started to hate the game. The original game had constant issues with repetition, but that was kind of saved with the save states helping me. Here I was going as intended, which is not what I was in the mood to deal with, so I just want to move on. Overall, it's a great soccer game, but I personally wouldn't bar with the Cubs. Just play it for fun, you have a good time. Next, and I guess final stop for Sluggers, is Super Sluggers on the Wii. After frustrations I had with the GameCube game, I was a bit worried going to this one, but I was relieved when the game felt more in line if I was line from a Mario Baseball game. The original felt a bit more realistic with the approach to gameplay. It still had the Mario feel, but it was also a bit more complex in comparison to how the other sports are with their simplicity. Super Sluggers goes a lot closer to that approach, so it felt a lot more easier to pick up and play. It's not as simplified as Wii Sports, but also isn't too as complex as like an MLB game might be, just a lot more better of a balance. The story mode here is very structured. Instead of doing the same story 4 times over, you just have one bigger story where you go around and recruit new characters to take on Bowser Jr. You get to explore your stadium's area in a kind of point-click style, which, while dumb, was fun to do. The roster of characters is pretty cool, having characters from Sunshine and Donkey Kong Country fill the spots, which the GameCube game also kinda did a bit. It's weird because the first game of the duology is my least favorite of the GameCube and Wii era games, whereas the second one like my favorite of all of them. I hope one day we get another Sluggers game instead of another tennis game for quite literally the 3rd time since this game's release. Yes, I'm looking at you, Fever. This game is definitely worth playing if you have any interest in the Mario Sports sub-series. They did what? I'm gonna be honest, I don't really have much to say on this game. It's just really boring. The gameplay is basically the same as 9's for the most part, just now Bowser might show up if you roll too much. The card gameplay didn't really work that game, and it's just nothing has been done to help it here. At least 9 minigames are actually pretty good and fun. I had a great time with all of those other than the boss minigames. While here, NDCube definitely ran out of ideas, and for most of the minigames are just forgettable or uninteresting. To give credit where it's due, I did like the bosses a lot more than I did in 9. The Bowser mode that the game shows off the most is just boring as hell. Playing as Bowser, you basically just sit there for a while just to roll every so often. Though scrolling over the CPUs can be fun until you barely scrape off any of their health due to the low amount of damage power can do to them. Just not a great game mode, honestly. This is Amiibo mode. This is the closest to traditional Mario Party, and they just ruined with forced Amiibo compatibility. Why do I need to skin Amiibo every time just to roll and stop the roulette? Just let me press A. I was barely paying attention during that mode. It was just the most boring thing in the game. I also corrupted my Luigi Amiibo for a minute. I got it fixed, but yeah, that happened. Overall, this game is just a pile of most boring shit you ever see. Don't borrow this game, it ain't worth your time. With Halloween around the corner, I want to do a game that I've had on back burner for a while that would fit the theme. I felt Mad Rat Dead fit the criteria well. A rhythm platformer based around a rat who's out for revenge for its death by a scientist. I'm not sure how well known this game is, but I've heard this game passing from videos like Gandu, for example. I eventually got on sale a little bit earlier in the year, just I put it off to Halloween. But after playing it, this game is so damn good, and that's a big understatement. This is also coming from a person who tends to have a love-hate relationship with rhythm games. And those games demand super precision with them, it can be really hard to play since I just have bad timing and aren't really always giving them help to use it. Mad Rat Dead, however, is a lot more relaxed with its gameplay. You're able to go off beat and even miss a bit while it's just doing whatever with the actual platforming. You won't really be punished for it. Even on normal difficulty with a time limit that gets more strict with each level, I still was able to do all levels on my first try, despite being down to the double digits in the later levels. The characters, the levels, and the overall design of the game is just really good, even when it's a bit gross and disturbing. I kinda want to be a bit vague with the game because I just don't really want to spoil anything about it. The game has so much worth finding out of yourself just because everything's so good. Whether it's the character development throughout, changes in level designs, or just how twisted the game can get, it's all so good. This honestly might be my favorite rate of the game, though that depends on the day because of Elite BHs might take a higher place. The $40 price tag is a bit high for it though, honestly, especially for a game that's relatively short. Though if you see it in sale, don't hesitate to pick up this game, it's definitely worth your time. So in a surprise turn of events, a canceled Ratchet & Clank Java game surfaced in basically just a complete state. As a person who marathoned the whole franchise this year, my work still wasn't done. The game basically just more going mobile, but a bit better, kind of. The game isn't that polished, which does a lot for a Java game. I actually skipped a couple levels by accident because I clipped through an area to a later level with the grapple shot due to the levels being kind of tied together. The story ties a bit more to Deadlock, even though it doesn't make much sense timeline-wise because the villain from Deadlock is here despite dying at the end of that game. Also, this is probably an emulator issue, but the game's running like fast-paced for some reason. It's still playable, but just noticeably faster. It's just really cool that this game was finally found and fully playable, despite the final boss being damn near impossible without cheesing it. If you want to learn more about the success rate of the game, I recommend watching the Golden Bolts video on it after this. It's pretty interesting. With this game done out of the way, I think I'm really done with the series for now. I'll probably be there for the next game, assuming it doesn't release on PS6 or some way I don't have access to. Oh wait, they're making a new mobile game? Oh. Next game in the Shantae series is Pirate's Curse. I've actually heard a good amount of people praising this game, though I've also not really heard a lot of people hate on the series either, so it's going to be a good game either way. There isn't much I can have to say on this game that's new, honestly. The overall gameplay is a bit more the same with the base level Pirate games, just more polished is good. Though this time we don't actually have the genie powers and transformations from the prior games due to the events of Risk Revenge. To counteract this, Shantae has access to tools that are locked in some way to her transformations. In the game, Shantae has a team with Risky take down a greater evil, so she has to use pirate items to help her out. She has a pistol to shoot targets and enemies, a hat to glide similar to Mario Wonder, a sword that works kind of similar to Scrooge McDuck's cane from the DuckTales games, and a can to give her a quadruple jump. They all work well and change things up a bit from the prior games. There's a bit more elaborate in comparison to the other games, but they're also a bit smaller, which I do like better so they don't outstay their welcome. I still think I like Rescue's Revolution more, though if we exclude that for now, this is definitely the best in the original trilogy. If you like the other games, you're definitely like this one also. As per Halloween tradition, I tend to play my favorite game of all time, Luigi's Mansion, in some way or form. Last year I played through a mod of the game that made Luigi be Louie from Pikmin, and also a ROM hack called Halloween Haunt, which was kind of like a pseudo-epilogue to the main game. If you want my opinion on those, it might be worth checking out my video from last year. This year, however, the game dropped on the GameCube service for Switch 2, giving me a new way to play it. And now I had easy access to the European version of the game, which has a very different hidden mansion from the North American version. First off, the mansion is completely flipped. A couple of bosses are different, like Chauncey's rocking horse patterns and bosses having Luigi ride in the Poltergeist, a couple examples. I did have to do a regular playthrough first to unlock the hidden mansion, so technically this is actually 2 playthroughs. The first playthrough is basically the same as usual, it's just the same game I know like the back of my hand. But the hidden mansion is a completely different story. I played through it alongside the Nerd broadcast in Period 7, and we were struggling. If it wasn't for save states, we may never finish this. I didn't think a game I knew so well could kick my ass so hard like this. I did make a video about our playthrough though, which is worth checking out after this. But despite the hell the hidden mansion put us through, this is still my favorite and most perfect game to me, honestly. Finishing out the Strikers trilogy, we had the more recent entry, Battle League. I don't want to go into this game immediately trashing it, so I do want to talk about the good about it. First off, the gameplay is actually very smooth and fun, although a bit more complicated to learn. Visually, it looks really good, coming from the Next Level Games who also did an amazing job with Luigi's Mansion 3's visuals. The characterization is also pretty entertaining, but the lack of content is just a big blow. While it's arguable the other games didn't have a whole lot of content, Belly just feels kinda empty without much offline modes. The game is very focused on online play, which only gets you so far, and after I did all the cups, I felt like I was basically done with the game. I didn't do the Galactic Cups, I think is what they're called, because after the GameCube game, I realized hard mode cups on these games just aren't worth the time. The game is also missing a lot of badass identity the other two games had. The most you get is the more sketch style with the Hyper Strikes, which even then those feel kinda toned down. It just overall feels like a very lacking entry that just new to the series. I was excited to play this game when it was coming out, but then just stopped playing after a week after I got it. Returning to it just didn't feel all that interesting. It's not the worst Mario Sports games, Ultra Smash still holds that by a long shot, but it's just sad to see this awesome series end up like this. Now for an oddity of the Mario Sports games, we get the only standalone basketball game, not counting Sports Mix for the Wii. They got Square Enix to make a 3D basketball game for the DS, have Final Fantasy characters involved, and use the touchscreen to dribble. The gameplay is actually pretty fun, although kind of awkward to be on a DS. The visual looks impressive for a 3D game on the console also. There's also a good variety of courts, some having different gimmicks like the pre-Piranha one which you only make longer shots, or the Wario one which has bombs all over the place. I felt like a nice refresh after the previous game I just talked about being kind of bland. Though I kinda got my fill in the game after the first couple tournaments and gave up on the Rainbow Cup. I did attempt it a couple times, but the game just kept throwing a bunch of garbage at me that I just was not in the mood to deal with. I know I did the same thing with Striker's Charge, but I'm basically just doing the same exact thing with more unfair shit thrown at me the more I continue, so I just don't see it worth it. I swear I just called it good earlier, then was suffering and hate myself for the rest of the game to see some creds I'm not even going to read. Alright, I'm going to stop ranting. I hope this doesn't become a trend in sports games going forward. It's just a lot harder to want to continue on sports games than as an adventure game or platformer or just something like that. Overall, I think Hoops 3 on 3 is a good game, but it has its own problems, whether it be from the hardware limitations or just the game having some issues of its own. Next up in the Shantae series is Half Genie Hero, the fourth, maybe fifth installment. I haven't heard too much on the game prior, but I think opinions are a bit more mixed on it. Gameplay wise it's about the same, at least for the main story. I'll get to the error modes in a bit. Shantae controls the same for the most part, but now has a transformation again after being absent in the prior game. She actually has a lot of transformations now than the other usual four. She can turn a pot for gems, a mouse, a crab, a blobfish for some reason. There's a good bit. The visuals of the game looks pretty cool, having a bit of a 2D look for the 3D models, a nice difference from the pixel art of the prior games. Story-wise, there isn't too much going on. Each level feels like it has its own story that loosely connects to the overall story. The game is also level-based, rather than interconnected like some of the other games are, though it overall isn't all that interesting compared to prior entries. Good for sure, but just a bit more basic than what I would have hoped for. Pirate's Queen Quest takes control of Risky Boots for what I think is the first time in the series. She controls close how Shantae does in Pirate's Curse, just with a few minor differences, though all the levels are basically the same as the main story, just some differences to adjust for Risky. It does make playing it after the main story a bit more redundant, but whatever. While cool to play with a different character, just wish there was a bit more originality with it. There's also Friends to the End campaign where you play as Bolo, Sky, and Roddy Tops, each with their own movesets. This does change things a bit, as there's none that really play like the prior game, so it's a new playstyle to learn. Most levels are ripped from the main campaign again, though they're a bit more streamlined and easier to run through. Well, I wouldn't really say easier, this one was hard as hell. While I still wish there was more originality, this one felt a bit more worth it than Pirate's Queen's Quest. There's also the costume campaigns, but I didn't want to do more playthroughs, so I just gave a quick test of each. Officer mode is fun, Ninja mode sucks, Jamless mode is weird, and Beach mode is just confusing. After all of that, I got my experience with the game. It's a great game, it's just a bit more confusing one to rank, although definitely recommend it alongside the rest of the series. Time for my annual Rayman Marathon, starting with the DSi port of the original Rayman. I don't really like the original Rayman. Visually the game looks amazing even on the more compressed DS screen. Music and gimmicks are good, but the actual gameplay and overall level design is just dog. I hate most levels in the game because of all the bullshit that's thrown at you. I played the PS1 version a few years ago and just didn't finish it because I legitimately just couldn't handle it anymore. I did beat the GBA port the year prior to that, but I must have blocked it all out of my mind from all the frustrations I had with it. I only felt obligated to play it this year because the ESI version was notoriously generous with health and stuff, but so it doesn't really help with the garbage the game has. I did use cheats to get some extra life just because the game kept doing them for me for the most bullshit reasons. You had Joe's Bar Summit? What the actual I just skipped that one because I just legitimately couldn't take it anymore. Also, why is this version force you to take a picture of every checkpoint? It's really damn annoying and pointless to have the shutter if the images aren't going to save anyways. Makes it really hard to play in public. The only thing keeping you from being any lower of a rating are the positives I mentioned earlier, and also because the occasional fun segments. This probably won't be the last time I play this game, but it's really testing my patience at this point. Now onto the better games. Rayman 2 is a classic. Although the PS1 version is very odd. Instead of porting the N64 version, they made a truncated version of that game that just feels very weird. It's not bad. I was kind of expecting worse for a PS1 port I knew that was already stripped down. The game has full voice acting for some reason, something the N64 and Dreamcast versions don't. The levels are mostly stripped back, some sections of levels being separate rather than being connected to the others. Some scenarios are different, like freeing Roblox's children doesn't take place on the player ship, but rather in the jail. It's a different area than our versions. There's also 800 Whelms rather than 1000, so Razorbeard just eats a red Whelm instead, which is kinda lame. I don't think this is the best way to play the game for the first time. If you select a replay type game, you will experience after you complete the main game. It's also far from the worst version of the game because Rayman DS exists and that can go explode or something, I don't know. Just when I thought it was done a second time, here comes a completely brand new game just out of nowhere. Ranger Rumble is an interesting game to the series to say the least. Also, you may have asked how I played the game when it's likely not out in most countries. Well, it had a soft launch in smaller countries like the Philippines for example, and people did not hesitate to dump the APK file online. Just one download later and bam, I'm an American playing the game. This game is probably the most unique out of the entire series, even including weird ones like All for One and Full Frontal Assault. It's now an online multiplayer game that kind of takes place in the Ratchet & Clank universe, which with that information is to turn off a lot of people, including me at first, but after trying it, it's pretty fun and addicting. It's nowhere near as good as most of the games in the series, although easily beats the PSP games. The gameplay works pretty well on mobile, just occasional touchscreen hiccups, and I've heard that it works alright on the PC even with controller support. The game modes are fun, one being a PvP to get 8 knockouts before others, another being bolt collecting arena where you try to get 200 bolts to last long enough to be a king, and a third soccer mode that's kinda similar to Blast Ball from Metroid Prime Federation Force, which is probably scaring even more people away just by me saying that. You actually don't play the titular characters for once. There's a whole selection of original characters, mostly based on species from the series. I personally like the Wombaxes the most, though all the designs for the most part are pretty cool. The game at the time of writing this is still in beta, and so doesn't have a full worldwide release date yet, so it's still pretty things to change be added as time go on. But I did want to quit on the list to at least have every game in the series on here. I did do all 3 chapters of the adventure mode, which ends off pretty unfinished, so there will likely be more chapters for me to play later on, so maybe this game might show up again at some point down the line when the story is finished. This game is not going to be for everyone, which is fair. If you are blindly hating on it, please give it a try, either now with the APK or when it releases later on with a more complete state. But for now, please no more games in this series, I'm tired. Back to the Rayman Marathon, time for Rayman 2 again. Revolution is a bit of a remake of the main versions of Rayman 2. The PS2 version is kind of an expanded, slightly reimagined version. First off, the game kind of an open world hub to explore rather than just going directly level to level like in the other versions. On one hand, I like the attempt to make the world more interconnected, but on the other hand, I prefer the more streamlined experience. Some levels are also combined differently than how they are on the N64 and Dreamcast games, and some are even in a different order, but it does feel like an attempt to make it a bit of a second playthrough experience. I personally wouldn't recommend this version as a first playthrough experience for Rayman 2. While it's a great version, it just has a good amount of stuff that feels off from the original vision of the game. It just feels like a version more worth playing if you already enjoyed our version of the game and wants to spice out the replay. Overall, it's a pretty good remake that I recommend to people who are familiar with all Rayman's 2 different versions of shenanigans. 8 long years people have been waiting, and it's finally here. Metroid Prime 4 is finally out, and the discourse online has been chaotic ever since. Though I'm going to ignore all that, I just want to talk about my opinions on the game. First off, the game's just great. Not the best in the series, but far from the worst. It feels like a natural continuation of Prime 3, which is already a bit weird in its own right, but still feels like a new Metroid Prime game. The locations are pretty varied, each major area having a different climate and gimmicks from each other. Though they aren't necessarily the most original theming though, these areas feel at least somewhat derivative of locations from other Prime games, even Prime 1 with ice volcanic locations for example. But the puzzle and exploration of these places are pretty enjoyable, especially with Viola, Samus's new motorbike. Driving around that's just so fun and makes traversing pretty good, and tolerable for the desert, which yes, I'm getting to the desert. One of the main issues people have is the desert in the game. It's just a big open area with not much really doing it other than go from one point to another. It's actually pretty similar to Hyrule Field in Ocarina of Time for example, where it's just a big open area thing next to main points of interest with some smaller things spread out. There it was best to ride a pony to get around easier, while here, you have Viola to move around a lot easier. It's basically just a Zelda game with a gun. I personally could have done without the desert, but it's not the most offensive thing in the series, considering other M exists. And just to rip their band-aid off, the Federation soldiers NPCs. Everyone is hating these guys, especially Mackenzie, but I personally don't hate them all that much. I could have also done without them, and kind of hope we don't get any more NPCs to deal with in the next games, but what we have I don't really mind. While having them follow you around is kind of annoying, having just leave them around, slowing down the game, they do at least make up for their personalities. I don't want to talk too much about the other characters because I don't know what really falls under spoilers, but they each have more unique characteristics to them that make me at least enjoy them when talking to them in the main operations area. I've seen people saying they completely ruin the entire game, but they don't really stick around all that much, and when they do, it's usually for a short time before you're off on your own again. But yeah, other than them, there isn't much other negatives I have. Although without spoiling anything, I do have to say the ending left me really unsatisfied. I'm not sure this is something that would be fixed with Prime 5, but I just only did not enjoy the ending all that much. Despite all that, I did really enjoy the game, although the long wait doesn't really show or make up for it all. Hopefully the next game doesn't take as long and ends up being a great continuation of the series. If you've played the series before, or maybe haven't at all, Prime 4 is a pretty good entry to pick up and try out. You might just like it. Back to the Rayman Marathon again. Time to finish off with Rayman 3 HD. Unlike Rayman 1 and 2, which I played a couple times prior, I actually haven't played 3 since 2022 with the original release on GameCube, despite being my favorite of the trilogy at the time. Granted, my first playthrough of Rayman 2 during that time was the DS version, and I very much hate that version, and you already know my thoughts on Rayman 1, so 3 just ended up being my favorite. But now with the replay of this HD port, I think the game's still pretty good. The game had both continuation and disconnection of Rayman 2, where it has a 3D platforming in it that 2 was great at, but more cinematic combat focus, with combat a bit more different than Rayman 2 was. It's still fun, although it'd be a bit clunky at times just because the combat is the most polished. It could also just be the HD port, because I heard that port is actually not the greatest way to play the game, so that might do it. The game is pretty creative though, and it's kind of in line of 2, just not as dark in tone. I do feel like after playing the other versions of Rayman 2, especially the 64 version in 2023, I think Rayman 3 has dropped from my favorite in the series, although only to second place. I just find 2 a bit more fleshed out, but that doesn't really mean 3 isn't a fantastic game. But now that ends off my annual Rayman marathon. I might have one more marathon left in me for 2026, but I am running low on games to play for the series, even counting the Rabbids series by extension. I'm just hoping those Rayman games that Ubisoft surprisingly confirmed releasing next year, because that'd be pretty awesome. The last stop in the Shantae series is Seven Sirens, the most recent game chronologically. Taking place at a new location, Paradise Island, rather than Skull Town starting off, is already a newer refresh to the series. Visually, the game looks great, a lot more power style from Half Genie Hero. Gameplay is for the most part the same, still fun. Transformations are handled a bit more differently this time. Instead of wearing the dance for each transformation, you get a medallion for each labyrinth that lets you use each transformation on the fly when needed. The structure of the game is a lot more Metroidvania-like, which hasn't been seen since like the original game kind of. However, this time, you look at the map and it just looks like something straight out of a Metroid game compared to the flat routes the early games had. The game also has animated cutscenes with full voice acting in them, though NPC dialogue isn't completely voiced, usually just one-liners or short bits, which kinda sucks. The game is actually pretty difficult starting off due to the lack of hearts, items, and other power-ups, though it becomes a bit easier as you progress. There's also one labyrinth that's timed, and it's hell, but that's just a small smudge on the great game. But yeah, that'll wrap up the Shantae series for now. This is overall just a great series, a great blend of Wario Land, Metroid, and Zelda, with some visually great looking games for the respective platforms, and some eye candy, which was a nice treat. And with Shantae 7 coming in the near future, I'm actually excited to see what the series still has to offer. Next game in the Zelda series is the Minish Cap for the Game Boy Advance. Back to the more traditional 2D Zelda games since the Oracle Duo, Minish Cap is another unique take on the formula. You look at the world map and it's actually pretty small looking, especially compared to a lot of the prior games. But then you jump into a tree stump, or a rock, or a jar, or something like that, you can shrink down to a couple of pixels. There you can explore more areas like the Minish Tribe towns and houses to find more secrets to progress. There's even a couple dungeons that you do while it's tiny, and the bosses of these dungeons are giant versions of basic enemies, which is pretty cool. The game also looks amazing, probably the best looking on the Game Boy Advance. As well as kind of interesting, talking cat looks like a bird. He just is kind of the Navi of the game, though I overall wasn't that much into the game. It's far from a bad game, it's probably on the higher end of the franchise, but I just didn't click as much as Four Sword Adventures or even the Oracle Duo. Who knows, maybe a replay at some point might click better, but even then, it was still a great time my first playthrough and definitely a game worth playing. So, I didn't even intend to play this game, let alone complete it. But I did a playthrough of Hello Neighbor just kind of out of random, sort of. So people are probably aware of the mods the game has gone recently where they just replaced the neighbor with FNAF animatronics, and it's probably the best thing ever, honestly. That resparked my interest in the game since like late 2019, I think. I actually do kind of like the first Hello Neighbor. It was following its sense off of 2, but after the game came out, I just kind of stopped caring after I beat it. Fast forward to now with the game popularity again with all the mods, I decided to jump back into it. First off, the game does kind of suck. It can be overly complicated, janky, and just flat out broken. But I always kind of like the charm of it with just how chaotic you can get with all of that. Still has plenty of issues because of the jank, but I can look past some of it. And of course I play with that Fredbear mod on, why wouldn't I? Even though it made the game harder, it was actually pretty funny just to be charged at by Fredbear when I'm just trying to get into the house. I also got every achievement for some reason. Half the achievements are pretty easy to get, though there's some like having to wait 3 hours for a damn tree to grow. That's legitimately where a third of my playtime was just me sitting there waiting for a tree to grow, where I just spent the most of that time just playing the next game on the list. But yeah, Hello Neighbor is a broken as hell game, but I do like it and it's definitely worth playing just for the mods alone. Wrapping up the Mario sports games for the year with a variety pack of sports. Sports Mix is another interesting case because it's made by Square Enix just like Hoops 3 on 3 and introduces 3 new sports to the Mario series. The game contains basketball, which is the only returning sport, and also includes hockey, volleyball, and dodgeball. Each game has a tournament mode, which is basically just a sports mode for each, so you basically have to play through the game 4 times over, just like Sonic Heroes, which has been brought surprisingly multiple times in this video. But each sport has different gameplay mechanics. Basketball is somewhat the same as a DS game, just not with traditional controls, kind of. You all dribble now, so you don't have to keep repeating pressing the button or shake the Wii remote like how you do with the touchscreen. The main WoW games are just shooting the ball, and the rest is just mostly button controls. I did enjoy basketball the most out of the 4 because I do like basketball overall. Though I played hockey next, and it was alright. There's a bit more complexity to it with having to deal with the goalie and aiming your shots better. It's still pretty fun, but just didn't click as me as much. And then I play volleyball, which is probably my least favorite in the collection. It's maybe just down how long it takes for the matches to go. You need to get 15 points to win a set, and then have to do it twice to win the match. It just takes a while and gets pretty boring pretty quickly. Interesting, there was supposed to be a volleyball game by Next Level Games called Super Mario Spikers for the Wii, but was cancelled because it was too violent. Considering how Striker's charged already is, it's impressive that volleyball is for Nintendo drew the line. But overall, volleyball is fine gameplay wise, just probably the least fun I have with the game. Last is dodgeball, which is probably the weirdest out of the bunch. Maybe just because when I played dodgeball in school, it wasn't really professionally structured, so playing it here, I was kind of confused why there's another player on the box around the opponent's side. Professional dodgeball also just isn't as widely known as the other 3 sports, so I guess that's probably why I was confused. But it was still fun. You use the WoW games the most, which having constantly throw the ball back at the other team. But after playing through all 4 stories, you unlock a final boss. It's the Final Fantasy enemy. What is going on? I guess I forgot to mention what Final Fantasy characters are in this game also, like in Hoops 3 and 3. But the boss match is just such a weird thing. You have to build up bonds pretty much to throw at the boss while your teammates basically just do whatever they feel like. It takes a while, but it's a fun time. Afterwards, you unlock a sports mix mode, which just kind of just combines all the sports into a tournament mode. Though I also just didn't feel like playing it since I was just ready to move on. And also when I did attempt it, I got volleyball first with the CPUs were a pain, so I was just done. It's a pretty solid game in the sub-series, but a bit of an oddity since the last time we've seen these sports. There was Sports Superstars on 3DS, but that was just the main 4 sports that already had their own series, plus horseback riding for some reason, so it doesn't really follow this one. I would actually love to see a new basketball game in the future, whether it's made by Square Enix or by a different competent team. But yeah, Mario Sports Mix is completely worth playing if you like the sports games, because this is probably the most neat experience out of them all. I haven't played many Sonic games this year, so I decided to play a bit of another oddity of a game. Sonic Pocket Adventure is the first Neo Geo Pocket game I ever played, and it's not even an SNK game either. Pocket Adventure is a bit of an odd game because it's kind of like a remix of Sonic 2. Pretty much all the levels are based on Sonic 2, even taking level designs from it, though it does feel like a new game in the series. It's kind of like a transitionary game from classic to modern, with Sonic having his modern design, and you slowly go from his classic to modern design throughout the game. Gameplay wise, it's pretty identical to most 2D Sonic games. It has the usual speed and spin dashing, has you collect 50 rings for special stages, and the half-pipe for those special stages. I did actually get all the Chaos Emeralds, which is kind of held later into the game, though I actually couldn't even beat the game, which was out of my control. The emulator I used was just a little buggy, and certain balls would just glitch out if you do the wrong thing. But the balls at Gigantic Angel Zone would just glitch and leave the area and just never come back. No matter how I approached the boss or try to change anything, I just could not get them to stay in the arena. Considering that I didn't want to have to change the emulators and do special stages a second time, I just had to give up. The only thing I'm missing out though are just a couple of bosses which are cool but are also pretty similar to bosses of our games. Despite that, it's a pretty decent game. Not a 10 out of 10 like what IGN gave it for some reason, but it's definitely a highlight of this handheld. Although Pocket Adventure was the last main game I played for the year, I did catch up a couple DLCs I missed out on. The first one I played was Namco Timeline for Atari 50, I did play through Atari 50 in 2024 along with the two DLCs at the time, which you can see my opinions in the 2024 games video. But to summarize, I think it's a pretty cool interactive documentary, while also having a good selection of Atari's catalog. I just say I wish for more third-party support since mostly Atari stuff with some Activision included. Though with the new DLC this year based around Namco, we got some of that. Having games like 2600 Pac-Man is a necessity. The timeline's interesting, although relatively short, only take me about an hour to do. The game selections feel kind of limited, with maybe just being Pac-Man, Dig Dug, Xevious, and Galaga. I do like Dig Dug though, so it's interesting seeing all the different releases. While the DLC is overall cool, I still do wish for more third-party support. Having Doom and Rayman be pretty cool to have re-releases of both versions for the first time ever, I think. I got it for slightly cheaper on sale, which is probably a better price since the base price is maybe a bit high for what's actually included, but it's overall a decent time. After the Atari 50 DLC, I continued with the Namco related content with Sonic DLC for Pac-Man World 2 Repack. The DLC is weird just because Sonic's now canon to the Pac-Man universe now. It also includes 3 new levels to play, which are all just Sonic based. Though it's not a new world part of the main map, it's just its own thing in the arcade machine. The levels themselves are interesting because they feel kind of ripped right out of Sonic Generations. Though it's kind of awkward playing Pac-Man, who isn't really a speed character. It actually kind of reminds me of the 3-world levels in the Wii U version of Captain Toad. Like, you know the character isn't supposed to be there or even built for the actual level, but they do adjust and make it work to get through. You do kind of get the spin dash if you rev roll, which if wearing the Sonic costume actually makes the spin dash sounds. The Eggman boss is just alright. The first phase wasn't the greatest, the second phase kind of reminded me of Sonic 06 Max segments, and third base is just another Death Egg robot fight. I don't think it's necessarily bad, but just kind of wish for something better. It's a nice addition to the game, but not worth the price at all, honestly. $5 might be more worth it, but for $12 is a bit much. Wait for it to go on sale, it's not worth it right now. And that's it for the year. Some great games, a couple duds, but overall a solid year. I guess I did keep true to my word for playing fewer games in 2024, but the script is longer, so I guess that didn't really help much. So I guess it's time to rank my top 10 games of the year, and do a second list of 2025 exclusive games afterwards. For my top 10 games overall, it would go Cut the Rope Magic, Ratchet & Clank Rift Apart, Ratchet & Clank Crack in Time, Shantae Advance, Risky Revolution, Kirby and the Forgotten Land for Starcross World, Deltarune, Tory Saturn, Doom the Dark Ages, Metarat Dead, Donkey Kong Bonanza. This one's actually kind of hard to cut down because there's so many good games I wanted to add, mainly a lot of 8.5 out of 10s that I just had to choose between. I also took Luigi's Mansion out of the list despite being a higher ranking, mainly because I played that game so many times and just want to give our games more of a spotlight, though still there in spirit, no pun intended. There were a couple cut games though that make it to the next list. 2025 games is a little bit more different. The list would go Ratchet & Clank Ranger Rumble, Pac-Man World 2 Repack, Metroid Prime 4 Beyond, Mario Kart World, Kirby and the Forgotten Lands, specifically Starcross World, Deltarune, specifically Chapter 3 and 4, Shantae Advance, Risky's Revolution, Tory Saturn, Doom the Dark Ages, Player Obscure Expedition 33. Wait, no, this isn't the Game Awards. Actually, it's Donkey Kong Bonanza. Luckily, I did play more than exactly 10 games compared to last year, though not by much. The only other game not included was just Switch 2 Welcome Tour, which that game sucks anyways, so that can piss off. I mean, does Ratchet & Clank Clone Home count? It technically became available to play this year. Ranger Rumble was also kind of stretching it because it hasn't officially been released everywhere in 2025, but still released in certain regions, so enough to count, I guess. Also, I moved Shantae Advance above Deltarune and Kirby because I feel like the new content from those games by themselves just aren't as strong as Shantae is, though are a bit better with the rest of their content included, hence the placement differences. But yeah, 2025 is a solid selection of games to play through. I did play through a couple series I wanted to get through, like Ratchet & Clank, Jak and Daxter, Shantae, and a couple unpredicted series like Cut the Rope. Next year I want to try to get through Twisted Metal, Metal Gear, maybe even Mega Man with the new game coming up soon. I also continue the Mario Marathon, maybe try and wrap up sub-series like the sports games, party games, and you can get Picross Dude done for the trilogy. I also want to try to get through more of the main Zelda games, hopefully to at least link between worlds. But yeah, I don't really know what 2026 is going to really hold. What we do know, we have a Mario Tennis game, which means I'm still not done with the sub-series. There's a new Yoshi game which seems interesting, but I just need to see more of it before I actually bite the bullet on it. Rhythm of Grim looks pretty good, hope I can get through Mega Mix before it releases. Dashi Life I think I'll also probably get some use out of for a while. But anyways, I think that'll wrap up the video. Here's to hopefully a good 2026. I don't know how many games I'll be playing, but I plan to return to another one of these videos in early 2027, so stay tuned for that. I also made a video of all the games I got in 2025, which is currently on my second channel, so maybe go check that out after this. Anyways, I'm tired after finishing this video, so don't expect anything for probably at least 6 months. Alright, I'm out of here. See ya.